Chapter 881. In the blink of an eye, just as Zhang Xiaohua raised his arm, Shimujuan's sword mercilessly pierced the front of Zhang Xiaohua's forehead without any sign of stopping. Oh no, I guess wrong. I can only use my arm to block it. Zhang Xiaohua saw the hatred and delight in Shimujuan's eyes and knew that this fellow would not hold back. Peacock and Qinchen, who were watching from a distance, also felt a chill in their hearts. Forget about Zhang Xiaohua, even they did not have the ability to escape from Shimujuan's sword when the sword was about to reach their foreheads. Ren Xiaoyao is going to die! Both of them muttered in their hearts. They did not know if it was a kind of relief, a kind of nostalgia, or a kind of grief. However, just as Zhang Xiaohua raised his arm, the scene changed again. Zhang Xiaohua only felt that the divine sense that had enveloped the area was suddenly withdrawn from his body and abruptly gathered at the tip of the sword on his forehead. The moment the tip of Shimujuan's sword touched the divine sense, it immediately stopped and could not pierce even half an inch further. That divine sense had actually blocked the sword for Zhang Xiaohua. What? What kind of divine power is this? Divine sense can be used like this? Zhang Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He had thought of imparting the divine power of the incense cult's Lord Cult, but he definitely did not expect it to be so powerful. This was something that even he might not be able to do. Shimujuan was stunned and immediately exerted more force in his hand. Just as he was about to stab down again, a voice rang in his ears. Mujuan, come back! Spare his life! It was Nun Jingyi's voice. Shimujuan did not dare to delay. He quickly withdrew his sword and bowed slightly. As per the cult master's orders. Zhang Xiaohua, on the other hand, had a look of confusion on his face. He looked at Shimujuan, who had stood up, and asked curiously, Sir, why did you stop? Did I succeed in breaking through the mountain? Humph. Shimujuan ignored him and turned to leave. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly shouted from behind. Since we've succeeded, then, can I see my dream? My dream. Zhang Xiaohua had never emphasized her words like this before. When Shimujuan heard this, he gritted his teeth so hard that they almost shattered. If not for the sect leader's orders, he would have turned around immediately, and used his long sword to stab 70 to 80 bloody holes in this detestable little thief's body. However, when he saw that the long sword was about to pierce Zhang Xiaohua's forehead, he actually blocked it out of thin air. It was very obvious that this was the cult master's unfathomable immortal Tao technique. Even if Shimujuan had complaints in his heart, he did not dare to disobey. At this time, two more people came from afar. They were Peacock and Qinchen's master, Nun Jingfan, and Yiyen's master, Nun Xuezhen. Both of them were overjoyed when they heard the news from their disciples. They hurried to Dream's residence and rushed here, but they were too late and missed a good show. When they saw such a huge scene in front of Mo Xian Palace and the main mountain path of Lingxiang Peak, they were extremely shocked. However, when they saw that Nun Jingyi and Jinggang were present and Peacock, Chen Chen, and Yiyen were all silent, they thought that something important must have happened. After meeting the cult master, they suppressed their joy and looked at the mountain path. Qin saw a tall and skinny disciple holding a long sword staggeringly walking up while Shimujuan walked in front with a gloomy face. It was very strange. Qin could not help but pull Nun Jingfan aside and said in a low voice, Master, Zixia was ordered by the sect leader to commit suicide by jumping off the cliff. What? Not only Nun Jingfan, but even Nun Xuezhen was stunned. She stole a glance at Nun Jingyi and asked, What did Zixia do wrong? Why did the cult master issue such an order? Qin did not hold back and pointed at Zhang Xiaohua. It's this guy who caused the trouble. Peacock continued, Master, that tall and skinny disciple is the Ren Xiaoyao that I told you about. He used to be in the Pill Hall but somehow ended up in the Flame Temple. It's him, he's junior sister Zixia's old flame. Qin gritted his teeth and said hatefully, He hit it so well that even we didn't know. What's going on? The two nuns were puzzled. I told Zixia to jump off the cliff. A cold voice was heard. It was Nun Jingyi who was standing far away. She waved her hand and said, "Come, let's talk at Emotion Palace. Tell Ren Xiaoyao to come as well." Then, she said to Nun Jinggang, "I'll have to trouble senior sister to find a disciple to check if Xia is dead." "Is she dead?" Peacock and Chin were surprised. If she jumped off the cliff, how could she still be alive? Unless they were like Xia Zai from Shixing Peak, they were lucky enough to survive. However, Xia Zai jumped off from the middle of the mountain. Lingering Fragrance Peak was much higher than the mountains in the Yulon Grand Canyon. Suicide Cliff? Abbess Jingfan was also shocked and blurted out, "Xixia is going to jump off the cliff for Ren Xiaoyao." Peacock and Chin heard this and knew that their master was implying something. The cult master did not say that jumping off the cliff had anything to do with Ren Xiaoyao, and their master immediately understood. Sure enough, Nun Jingyi nodded and sighed. "Xia is really stubborn. If we can only do this. Let's hope so." Nun Jingfan agreed. "Eh? Why are there Flame Temple disciples following them to Emotion Palace?" Chin Chen's eyes were sharp and saw Zhang Pinger and Peacock far away. Zhang Pinger's face was a mixture of joy and worry. "Humph, Flame Temple hid such a great master, and the temple master cannot absolve himself from the blame. They did not dare to come up, so they naturally sent disciples to find out. Let them go back. When this is over, we'll settle the score with their temple master." Inside Emotion Palace, there was a dazzling hall. Nun Jingyi was sitting in the middle of the hall. Nun Jinggang, Nun Jingfan, and Nun Shuizhen were also seated. There were also a few unknown elders sitting in their respective seats. Peacock, Chen Yuyan, and Shimujuan were all standing in their respective seats. Only Zhang Shihua's clothes were messy and his chest was still stained with blood. He stood silently in the middle of the hall. His face was calm, but his eyes were looking around for traces of dream. Nun Jingyi sat there with a small booklet in her hand. She carefully flipped through it, and put it down after a long while. She looked coldly at Zhang Xiaohua and ignored him. She then turned to Peacock and the others and smiled. "Peacock, Chen, and Yuyan, since you've passed the inheritance, you are qualified to have a seat in Emotion Palace. Find a place to sit." The three of them respectfully bowed and found a place to sit. "How dare you, Ren Xiaoyao? You dared to deceive me by hiding your identity and sneaking into my sect. Tell me, who are you? What is your purpose in coming to Emotion sect?" Nun Jingyi shouted suddenly. It was as if she had used some kind of immortal technique. Zhang Xiaohua felt dizzy for no reason. He opened his mouth and said, I. Before he could finish the word, his mind immediately became clear. He thought to himself, "This is bad. This sect leader's immortal technique is really powerful. There is a difference between having an inheritance and not having one. She can play so many tricks with just a normal divine sense. Should I be honest with him? Or should I tell her half of the truth?" Zhang Xiaohua knew about the book that Nun Jingyi had just read. He didn't dare to release his divine sense, so naturally, he didn't know what was recorded in it. However, after listening to Nun Jingyi's question, he assumed that the book recorded the process of him entering Emotion sect and his background. The process didn't need to be said. Zhang Xiaohua didn't intend to hide it, but what about his background? Zhang Xiaohua didn't believe that Emotion sect could expose his true identity. Otherwise, Nun Jingyi wouldn't be talking about Ren Xiaoyao, but Zhang Xiaohua. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua steeled his heart, looked left and right, and respectfully said, "Greetings, leader. When this little one entered the fragrant religion, there were indeed some things that were hidden. However, those were some things that were difficult to say. If leader asks, this little one will tell you in full detail. However, before I speak, can I see Meng? Xixia? You still want to see Xixia at this time?" Nun Jingyi sneered. "You are Rejuvenation Valley's prospective son-in-law. Although you haven't bowed to heaven and earth, your status has already been set. What qualifications do you have to see Xixia?" Zhang Xiaohua was dejected as he said, "Please be merciful, Sir Sect Leader. This lowly one was misunderstood by Xia because of this. This lowly one barged into Lingering Fragrance Peak to let Xia listen to this lowly one's explanation. This lowly one feels that it's better to say it in front of Xia. Humph, you've already violated the rules of Mo Xian sect by rushing to Lingering Fragrance Peak. It's a crime punishable by death. You still want to use your tongue to deceive the disciples of Mo Xian sect? Zhang Xiaohua was very calm as he said in a deep voice. This lowly one knows that trespassing on Lingering Fragrance Peak is a great crime, but this lowly one only wants to see Xia in a dignified manner and explain my misunderstanding clearly. As for the death penalty and such, it's better to wait until Xia forgives this lowly one. What a joke. This Xiaoxia came to Lingering Fragrance Peak to look for a dream. Why should I explain to you? Although your immortal Tao is more powerful than mine, it doesn't mean you can capture me in one go. Things like the death penalty? Oh my God, I'm really scared. This Xiaoxia has a 50-year-old mother and an unsettled wife. I don't want to accept the death penalty. Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself, but he still frowned at Nun Jingyi. Mo Xian sect was under her control. If he wanted to see Xia sect, he needed her approval. But it's really a dream. Why did it leave just like that? Don't tell me you don't want to hear my explanation? How did Xia meet someone like you? Nun Jingyi said. You were so impetuous. You thought your martial arts were superior, so you rushed to Lingering Fragrance Peak and provoked the death penalty. Xia sect jumped off Lingering Fragrance Peak's martyr cliff for you. She exchanged her life for yours. In exchange, this sect won't pursue your crime and won't take your life. What? Xia. She left just now to go to Martyr Cliff. Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Xia sect's dream to choose her own death without hesitation for his sake. He also understood why Shimujuan's sword was blocked by the sect leader. -4. Chapter 882. Where is Martyrdom Cliff? Zhang Xiaohua asked anxiously. However, he was immediately disappointed. Dream had left for a long time. Even if he arrived now, how could she still be lingering on Martyrdom Cliff? What? Do you want to go? Nun Jingyi sneered. Do you want to see if Xia is still there? Or do you want to jump down? Of course I want to jump down and see, Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation. Your wish is beautiful, Nun Jingyi said sarcastically. Unfortunately, you don't have the qualifications. Zhang Xiaohua was angry. He wasn't angry because of Nun Jingyi, but because of himself. He was angry at his own impulsiveness. He even regretted his actions of rushing up Martyrdom Peak. If he knew this would happen, why didn't he quietly go up Martyrdom Peak and explain things to Dream before taking her away? Wouldn't that have been better? He painstakingly concealed his cultivation and fought his way up Martyrdom Peak. Was this the end he got? An end that was separated from Dream's yin and yang? In an instant, Zhang Xiaohua's heart was filled with despair and emptiness. A sense of powerlessness filled his heart. Pa! Zhang Xiaohua slapped himself in the face. It was a ruthless slap. A stream of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. What's the use of concealing your cultivation? What's the use of blindly seeking perfection? Dream, she was still forced to death by this old witch. A voice rose from Zhang Xiaohua's chest. His eyes, which had always been calm and clear, were now gradually burning with raging fury. So what if we barge into the Lingering Fragrance Peak? So what if we massacre the Lingering Fragrance Peak? At worst, I'll go to the underworld with Dream. Suddenly raising his head, Zhang Xiaohua stared at Nun Jingyi, who was sitting high up in the distance. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate her veil. What? Do you still want to challenge me? Nun Jingyi coldly said. Young man, let's not talk about your martial arts. Even if you cultivate for 60 years, your martial arts won't be a match for me. Although there's a good saying that even the heavens can forgive the mistakes of young people. Unfortunately, there are some mistakes that cannot be made. As long as you make a mistake, you must accept severe punishment. This kind of punishment is something you will never imagine and will make you regret it for the rest of your life. Zhang Xiaohua raised the great wisdom sword and slowly walked forward. Now that the dream was no longer here, what else did he need to hide? Right now, he only wanted to fight with the mysterious sect leader and vent the grief and indignation in his heart. Even if he lost and died, he could walk on the path of the netherworld with his dreams. Ren Xiaoyao, what are you doing? Qin was the first to lose his patience and stood up to shout. Peacock was also anxious. Ren Xiaoyao, how dare you challenge the hierarch's authority? If this wasn't Mo Xian's palace, if Master wasn't by the side, if His Excellency cult leader wasn't watching from above, these two people might have already flown up. Unfortunately, how could the current Zhang Xiaohua listen to these words? A rare impulse, a rare anger, and a rare hot-bloodedness drove this young man slowly and somewhat unsteadily towards Nun Jingyi. Nun Jingyi only watched silently and didn't seem to make any movements. Shimujuan, who was standing far away, had a cold smile on his face. Seeing that he was about to close the distance of 10 feet, Zhang Xiaohua was about to release his divine sense. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. Xiao Yao, what are you doing? That voice was soft, hoarse, and weak, but in Zhang Xiaohua's ears, it was like the sound of nature. His anger immediately calmed down, and he looked back in disbelief. Wasn't the person standing in front of the hall dressed in palace attire Dream? However, the palace attire didn't look very suitable and Dream's hair was still wet. When Zhang Xiaohua saw Dream, he was like a mouse that saw rice. How could he still care about arguing with Nun Jingyi? He turned around and ran towards the hall's entrance. However, with his body, his steps were a little unsteady and blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. And, halfway through running, he didn't forget to turn back and glare at Nun Jingyi. I was almost fooled by her. When Dream saw Zhang Xiaohua's appearance, she hurriedly ran in and said, Xiao Yao, slow down, you're still injured. But as she ran, she couldn't help but let her tears flow out. Just as she was about to reach him, she heard Nun Jingyi's cold snort. Dream immediately hesitated and slowed down. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't care less and grabbed her hand. Their intimate actions were even more intimate than when they were alone in the Lihua Palace. Dream immediately blushed and tried to pull her hand back. How could she be a match for Zhang Xiaohua's 10,000 pounds of strength? She could only let Zhang Xiaohua hold her hand with one hand. Peacock and Qin could not help but feel a little uncomfortable. They just sat by the side and watched quietly, especially Qin, who pricked up his ears, wanting to hear what the two of them were talking about. Unfortunately, after a while, Zhang Xiaohua opened his mouth and said, Dream, you have to believe me, There's really nothing between Ye Qianyu and me. That so-called martial arts competition for marriage was just me helping Huichun Valley out of trouble. The so-called marriage is fake. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to think too much. There's really nothing between me and Ye Qianyu. I swear, really, if I lied to you, I'll be struck by lightning, really. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua was no longer as eloquent as before. He only clumsily expressed that he was absolutely innocent. Dream had heard Qin mention that Zhang Xiaohua and Ye Qianyu's marriage had already been decided. She felt extremely uncomfortable in her heart. However, when she saw that her sweetheart had risked his life to fight to the top of Yixiang Peak for her, how could she not know what he was thinking? Just as she was about to speak, a cold voice said, And Xiao Yao, you rushed to Yixiang Peak because you wanted to explain this to Zixia? Zhang Xiaohua did not turn around. He looked into Dream's large eyes and was unwilling to look away. He smiled and said, Of course, why don't I do it because I have nothing better to do? As he spoke, he coughed a few times and some blood flowed out from the corners of his mouth. Everyone felt dizzy. This reason was really unexpected. Dream used her hand to wipe the blood from the corners of Zhang Xiaohua's mouth and smiled faintly. Your heart. I know, I have never misunderstood you. Nun Jingyi asked again. Didn't you rush to Yixiang Peak because you heard that Shimujuan was going to propose marriage to Zixia? Zhang Xiaohua was not in a good mood and did not bother to answer such a shallow question. I also know Dream's heart. How could she possibly fancy Shimujuan? It's just because I did something wrong that caused her to misunderstand. I told her clearly, so she naturally knows. Nun Jingyi was silent. Nun Jinggang and the rest were also silent. Only Shimujuan's face was ashen. Actually, the feelings of a young man were really pure. It was just that you have me in your eyes and I have you in my eyes. How could it be as complicated as Nun Jingyi thought? After a long while, Nun Jingyi asked again. In that case, you racked your brains to sneak into Zhuan Cult, Shixin Peak, and Mythical Flame Hall to look for Zixia? Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up. That's right, he had been thinking hard about how to cover up the fact that he had infiltrated Zhuan Cult to look for Zhang Xiaohu. Nun Jingyi's words reminded him that his purpose of infiltrating Zhuan Cult was to look for Dream. Wouldn't that be perfect? This idea spun rapidly in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. Zhang Xiaohua held Dream's hand and turned around. He nodded and said, Lord Sect Master is wise. That is exactly the case. Then, he looked at Dream affectionately and told her everything. Of course, this was something that Zhang Xiaohua had already repeated countless times in his mind. He told her about how he came from a small sect and how he encountered Dream and the Shirtai. He also told her about how he ate a mystical fruit overseas and gained boundless strength. And wait. He continued until he heard the elders of Zhuan Cult calling him Jing or something. Only then did he realize that the Shirtai might be from Zhuan Cult. Then, he coincidentally met someone who wanted to kill Nieqianyu and sent her all the way to Rejuvenation Valley. Of course, in order to reduce the possibility of Rejuvenation Valley being implicated, Zhang Xiaohua made himself sound more sinister. After Zhang Xiaohua finished speaking, the entire Mo Xian Palace was silent. No one could have imagined that Zhang Xiaohua's words were true. This young man was deeply in love with the girl he met a few years ago. He traveled thousands of miles to find her, spent a lot of effort, and went through countless trials before he finally found her. Was this a real experience? And Xiaoyao, you only spent a few days with Zixia. How is it that unforgettable? How do you know that she still has you in her heart? Nun Jingyi was puzzled. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and shook his head. Well, I can't explain it clearly. I only know that Meng's shadow has been deeply engraved in my heart. I miss her every moment. I also believe that Meng is the same as me. Then, he turned around and asked, Don't you agree? Dream blushed and whispered, Lord Sect Master Xiaoyao, he is right. This disciple also misses him very much. That day when I met him in Mythical Flame Hall, this disciple almost thought that it was a dream. The others did not react, but Peacock and Qinchin were shocked. Sigh. There was a long sigh and Nun Jingyi said, Your story really moved this sect leader. Nun Jinggang, who was next to him, said, What Ren Xiaoyao said is really incredible. I can't believe it. Nun Jingyi looked at her and said, Great Elder, whether you believe it or not, aren't the two of them standing right in front of you? There are many strange things in the world and this emotion is even more strange. This sect believes it. But... Nun Jinggang wanted to say something again. Nun Jingyi waved her hand and said, Great senior sister, Zixia even jumped over the cliff of martyrdom. I think you already know my feelings. I will listen to Lord Sect Master's orders. Nun Jinggang was silent. -4. Chapter 883. Zhang Xiaohua was the first one who didn't believe her. He pointed at his nose and said, Sect leader, you don't want to investigate my background? Investigate? Jingyi snorted and said proudly, Let's not talk about whether I believe you or not. Even if you're lying, why should we be afraid of a disciple with a dubious background? Even if you're a disciple of the Tenria sect, there are plenty of disciples in my sect. So what if there's one more or one less? Besides, are you a disciple of the Tenria sect? If the Tenry's sect's disciples attacked my lingering fragrance peak, wouldn't your heavenly king eat you alive? Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. He had tried his best to hide his identity, and even made up some lies. Unfortunately, Jing Yi Nun didn't care at all. Yes, he was just a small pawn. Even if his martial arts were strong, what could he do to the incense order? Well, even if he did something bad, would the sect care? Until today, Zhang Xiaohua finally understood the sect leader of Jianghu, the sect leader of Jianghu, the sect leader of Jianghu. Zhang Xiaohua was sincerely convinced. He bowed deeply and said, "Thank you, sect leader, for your help." Unexpectedly, Jingyi waved her hand and said, "It's not over yet. Don't thank me too early." Zhang Xiaohua was surprised and asked, "Sect leader, do you have any other orders?" The sect leader didn't say anything. He waved his hand and Peacock stood up and said, "And Xiaoyao, our sect leader values female disciples. We don't promote lust. The relationship between male and female disciples is strictly regulated, especially the female disciples of my Mo Xian Palace. Without the sect leader's approval, they can't marry each other privately. You, although you're a disciple of Lingering Fragrance Peak's fire temple, it's impossible for you to marry Sister Zixia." However, the sect master of the fragrance sect felt that this matter was too absolute, and went against the harmony of the heavens, so he set up a test. If a disciple wants to marry a female disciple from Mo Xian Palace, they must pass 3 tests before they can do so. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She lowered her head and looked at Meng. Meng was also stunned and shook her head slightly. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Please explain in detail, Lord Kong. For the sake of the dream, no matter what these 3 trials are, this one has to go through them." Peacock nodded and said, "The first trial, congratulations Ren Xiaoyao, you have passed. You have to fight your way through Lingering Fragrance Peak from the foot of the mountain all the way to Mo Xian Palace. When you defeated Hu Ben, you had already completed it." Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. "Then, the second stage?" Peacock smiled again and said to Dream, "The second stage, congratulations junior sister Xia, you've passed as well. The female disciple of Mo Ninggong will have to jump down from Lingering Fragrance Peak's 10,000 feet high sacrificial cliff to show that she has no regrets towards the disciples who challenged the peak." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She clenched her fists and shouted, "Meng, you really jumped off the cliff. I thought the sect master was lying to me." She then looked up and down. "Are you hurt?" Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's burning gaze, Meng's face flushed red. She said shyly, "No, just a little bit of flesh. It's nothing serious." Zhang Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief. She raised her head and said, "Lord Kong, this sacrificial cliff, is it dangerous?" Peacock said seriously, "Of course, it's very dangerous. If not, how can it test one's feelings?" Zhang Xiaohua's heart warmed. She held Meng's hand even tighter. "Then what about the third trial? Is Lord Kong going to congratulate us?" Peacock shook her head. "The third trial is to invite you to the trial forest." At this point, Peacock hesitated for a moment before continuing. "This third challenge is supposed to be the easiest of the 3, but the forest of testing love has been abandoned for a long time. It should have been repurposed a long time ago. The disciples of my cult have to go there every year to train, so even I have only just found out about the origin of the forest of testing love. Furthermore, the easiest challenge is actually the most difficult one." Nun Jingyi said, "Marriage is predestined. Since Ren Xiaoyao met Violet Lo and chased her all the way to Lingering Fragrance Peak, these 3 trials are also predestined. If Ren Xiaoyao can't pass the third trial, it means that he is not destined to be with Meng. Don't even think about holding hands anymore." After hearing Peacock say that the third trial was the most difficult, Meng's heart jumped to her throat. She turned her hand and held Zhang Xiaohua's hand. She looked at Zhang Xiaohua's pale face with a conflicted expression. Zhang Xiaohua felt it. She lowered her head to look at Meng and smiled to comfort her. Qin couldn't hold it in any longer. He jumped out and said regretfully, "And Xiaoyao, actually, With your martial arts, your martial arts just now, this third trial shouldn't be too difficult. It's a pity that you're heavily injured. How can you go to the trial forest? I'm afraid you can't come out even if you enter. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, Your Excellencies, please enlighten me. This trial love forest hurdle, what exactly is it? Chen said. It's actually quite simple. I just heard from my master that 10,000 years ago, the Immortals. He covered his mouth as if he realized that he had said too much. He quickly covered it up. 10,000 years ago, the ancestors felt the loyalty of some of their disciples and specially set up 3 trials. The first 2 trials tested one's martial arts, the second one tested one's feelings, and the third one tested one's luck. Oh, you've been to the Valley of Orchids and know about the Valley of Orchids. This trial forest is a small version of the Valley of Orchids on my Lingxiang Peak. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. The Valley of Orchids is so big. Is there such a big place on Lingxiang Peak? Chen rolled his eyes at him and said, You don't have to worry about that. In any case, this testing love forest is the same as the Great Orchid Prairie. There are many wild beasts inside. What you saw in the Great Orchid Prairie is also present in the testing love forest. Your task is to kill 100 of those blood wolves in the testing love forest and bring out their tails. Ah? 100 blood wolves? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and blurted out. 100 tails is also a lot. How do I bring them out? Chen smiled and said, You just need to put those tails in one place. Then he said with regret, I heard that this task was very easy in the past. There are many blood wolves in the forest. As long as your luck is not bad, you can find the blood wolves in less than half an incense stick's time. Oh, I forgot to tell you. These 100 blood wolves must be killed within 3 incense sticks' time. Those 100 wolf tails must also be placed in a designated place within 3 incense sticks' time. In the past, there were many blood wolves. With your uninjured martial arts, it should be easy to deal with them. However, now that you are seriously injured and your qigong is not good, the difficulty is not small. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that this year happens to be the year of the Valley of Orchids. Before the disciples of Xian Palace went to the Valley of Orchids, they first practiced in the trial forest. The wild beasts inside were almost killed by us. If you go in now, there may not even be 100 blood wolves in the trial forest. Ah? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised again and said to Nun Jingyi, Leader, isn't this making things difficult for this disciple? Nun Jingyi said coldly, Didn't I say it just now? Marriage is predestined by the heavens. If the heavens grant your wish, then there will definitely be 100 blood wolves in the testing love forest, not just 99. Moreover, you will definitely find them within half an incense stick's time. If not, why do you think the ancestors of my sect set this rule? Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Yes, the rules passed down by the incense cult had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Although there were some strange things in it, there was absolutely no possibility of an exception for her. Thinking about the leniency of some people in Ruijin Palace today, she did not know if they knew about this rule. Meng Yi held Zhang Xiaohua's hand and whispered, It's better. Don't go. You have been fighting hard for a long time. How can you still have the strength? Your internal force must have been exhausted. If you go in now, won't you become food in the stomach of the wild beasts? Zhang Xiaohua shook his head. Don't worry, I have my own way. You can sacrifice yourself to jump off the cliff for me, so what if I sacrifice a little for you? With that, Zhang Xiaohua touched his chest and said, Disciple is injured. Can we do it at another time? No, now. Xiaoyao. Meng Yi was still not used to this name. Her mouth called out, but she was reluctant to let go of her hand. Yes, since she jumped off the cliff, she did not think that she could come back alive. But what surprised her was that she fell into the cold pool under the cliff. When her disciple brought her back to Xian Palace and saw Zhang Xiaohua, she had already abandoned any previous thoughts. She just wanted to let him hold her hand like this and stay together until they were old. Now, before the palm of her hand was warm, they had to separate again. This separation was the separation of life and death. If what Qinchin said was true, even if there were not many fierce beasts in the testing forest, Zhang Xiaohua was injured, and he was not a match for 1 or 2 blood wolves. Not to mention, if he wanted to pass, he must risk his life to kill 100 blood wolves. Meng Yi did not hesitate to believe this. Zhang Xiaohua knew Meng Yi's mood. He pinched her palm with his finger, blinked his left eye and whispered, "It's okay, really. I will come back in a while. It's just 3 hours. Compared with the time we will spend together in the future, it's really not a big deal." Then, "You must be careful." Meng Yi bit her lips and said, "Even if you can't kill so many blood wolves, don't take risks. As long as you stay alive, we still have a chance." "Okay, I will listen to you," Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said. After Zhang Xiaohua was taken away by the disciple, Meng Yi stood alone in the hall. Everyone was silent. Qinchin sat below, and was very close to Meng Yi. She raised her eyes and looked at the others. Unconsciously, she secretly raised her thumb and said in a low voice, "Zixia, you really want to, Your hand was held by him today? Or was it long ago? Well, has your face been kissed by that guy?" -4. Chapter 884. What are you talking about? Qinchin. Nun Jingyi scolded. Qinchin stuck out her tongue and didn't dare to speak. Nun Jingfan looked at the pitiful dream and raised her head to ask, "Sect leader, what do you think? Ren Xiaoyao's chances of success are?" "What chance?" Nun Jinggang sneered. "Not even 1 chance. Not to mention that the disciples of Mo Xian Palace have already wiped out all the wild beasts in the testing love forest. With his injured body, how can he kill 100 blood wolves?" Nun Jingyi also smiled bitterly. "Marriage is predestined by the heavens, but it depends on Zixia's luck." Nun Xuezhen glanced at the dream and said with some hesitation, "Sect Master, I know some things that happened back then. I reckon that Sect Master is also very emotional now and intends to help Zixia and Ren Xiaoyao be together. Since you've already asked Mu Jun to spare Ren Xiaoyao's life, then why can't you lift your hand again and show mercy outside the law this time?" "Show mercy outside the law?" Nun Jingyi looked coldly at Nun Xuezhen and thought for a while. After a while, she said, "Junior sister Xuezhen, you're good at everything except for one thing." Nun Xuezhen was stunned and said in a low voice, "Sect leader, please teach me. You just like to be a good person too much." "Sect leader, this is reconciliation again? Is it not good to be a good person?" "Of course it's good to be a good person, but you can't be a good person too much. You can't be a good person who has no principles and doesn't care about the sect's rules." Nun Jingyi sighed and said, "Let's talk about what happened just now. Ren Xiaoyao broke into Mo Xian Palace, which is in accordance with the sect's rules. He only needs to fight from the bottom of Lingxiang Peak to Mo Xian Palace. Mo Xian Palace is not within the sect's rules. I let Mu Jun fight just to test his status and martial arts, and see where he came from. Ren Xiaoyao can't even take one move from Mu Jun, which is exactly because he comes from a small sect. He just got lucky and has great strength, but he doesn't know anything about moves. At this time, I can naturally be a good person and ask Mu Jun to stop. But the 3 tests of love were set by the ancestors and recorded in the sect's rules. Even if there's no chance of survival in the 3rd test, Ren Xiaoyao will still have to pass it. At this time, if I do as you say, show mercy outside the law and be a good person and easily let Ren Xiaoyao go, then what about the people who failed to pass the tests? Is it fair to them? And in the future? In the future, if someone wants to challenge the trial again, tell me, what should I do? Will I still show mercy outside the law? If I show mercy outside the law, won't that be unfair? But if I show mercy outside the law again, what about in the future? Won't I have to show mercy outside the law again? If this happens again and again, won't it become a habit? Won't the 3 tests of love gradually become decorations? Will the disciples of Emotian Palace be taken away so casually? When Nun Shuizhen heard this, her forehead was covered in sweat. She quickly said, "This subordinate is stupid, I didn't think it through." Nun Jingyi shook her head. "It's not that you didn't think it through, it's because you're a good person to begin with. You didn't think that such a simple and laughable action of yours would fundamentally shake the sex rules. And the consequence of shaking the sex rules is the collapse of the sect's disciples' beliefs. In the end, the sect will be wiped out and forgotten. At that time, the one who will die won't be Ren Xiaoyao alone." Nun Shuizhen immediately stood up and said with shame, "You're right, sect leader, this subordinate knows her mistake. Perhaps, from your point of view, you may not be wrong. After all, you did it out of kindness." Nun Jingyi said with melancholy, "But from my point of view, you made a big mistake." She then smiled. "This is the difficulty of being a good person. You must be a good person within your duty. As long as you cross your boundary and challenge the foundation of the church, then you must restrain your impulse. Even if you can save a life, you must not stand out because the consequences of doing so will implicate the dignity of the church and will implicate the lives of even more people. This is the difference between being the sect leader and you being the sect leader." She then waved her hand and gestured for Nun Shuizhen to sit down. She then smiled at Peacock. "Peacock, do you understand?" Peacock nodded and said, "Being a good person seems to be a trap. It may look tempting and there are plenty of reasons to do it, but once you fall into this trap, you will lose your principles and cross the line. You will break the rules of the cult, and in the end, you will mess up the entire fragrance cult. Sect leader, do you think this disciple is right?" Nun Jingyi clapped her hands and said, "This child is worth teaching." She then looked at Qinchen and Yuyan. Qinchen spoke first. "Sect leader, I will only be a good person within my duty. What do you think?" "It's okay, of course it's okay," Yuyan said shyly. "I will control my desire to be a good person and see the consequences of being a good person. Then, I will decide whether to do it or not." It's okay." Nun Jingyi nodded slightly. She looked at Yuyan, who was distracted, and said, "It's still early. Qinchen, tell me what happened in the inheritance room." Qinchen liked this kind of thing the most. He described it vividly and did not forget to ask, "Sect leader, how did you know that Senior Peacock was the first to understand it?" "Haha, when your cultivation reaches a certain level, you will know. It's still too early to tell you now. The three of you are lucky. The three of you did not choose the same technique. Furthermore, from the looks of it, Peacock already knows the secret of the legacy chamber. However, this secret must be kept a secret. You cannot tell anyone else, or else you will fall into the trap of the good guys." Everyone shuddered and nodded. Peacock smiled and asked, "Sect leader, do you still want to teach me why this is a good person's trap?" "Previously, I have already said that in the inheritance of the Immortal Tao, cultivation methods and aptitude are only one aspect, but the most important aspect is still opportunity. When you enter the secret inheritance room and choose a cultivation method, it is an opportunity. Perhaps you will be able to choose a cultivation method that suits your own cultivation, or perhaps several people will choose a cultivation method of the same attribute. But in the secret inheritance room, there are only 5 types of primordial stones. If everyone knows, then they will definitely choose the same place. In that case, no one will be able to comprehend it, and everyone will be delayed. Wouldn't the direct selection become a decoration? Won't the inheritance of the incense sect be for nothing?" "I understand," Peacock said respectfully. "Actually, this is because the way of immortality has been destroyed. If it was 10,000 years ago, this good person. Haha, anyone can do it. In Emotian Palace, everyone was talking about the secrets of the incense sect. If it was any other day, Meng might be able to listen in. However, her heart was tied to Zhang Xiaohua. She was worried about Zhang Xiaohua's life and death. How could she listen? She stood alone and did not say a word. Her eyes were looking at the door from the corner of her eyes. Even her ears were pricked up, listening carefully to the movements outside. Meng did not know how long she had been suffering. Then, she heard noisy footsteps outside. Meng was startled. It's time for a result. The first to enter was not Zhang Xiaohua. However, when she saw a few male disciples from Ruijin Palace holding bloody wolf tails in their hands, Meng was so happy that she almost cried. Even Nun Jingyi was curious. Mu Jun, I don't think 3 incense sticks of time has passed. Ren Xiaoyao is back already? Sect leader, it's exactly 2.5 incense sticks of time. Good. Nun Jingyi was overjoyed. This is a match made in heaven. I have nothing to say. Yes, passing all 3 trials was the most difficult one. He completed the task before the time was up. Wasn't this fate bestowed by the heavens? What else could she say? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua enter last, Meng's face was filled with shyness. However, she did not go forward to greet him. She only looked at him with a smile. Zhang Xiaohua had just entered Mo Palace. Before he could greet Meng, he immediately felt a divine sense sweep over him from head to toe. Zhang Xiaohua's heart trembled. He silently chanted the incantation. However, his face was nonchalant and looked exhausted. Zhang Xiaohua walked to Meng's side and nodded at her with a smile. Then, he turned around and bowed. Sect leader, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. When I entered the forest, I encountered a pack of blood wolves. I didn't dare to be careless and used all means to kill them all. Nun Jingyi nodded and said to Peacock, Peacock, give Ren Xiaoyao some Yuhuandan pill to control his injuries first. Then she asked her subordinates, how many blood wolf tails did Ren Xiaoyao bring back? The male disciple from Ruijin Palace respectfully said, Sect leader, no more, no less, it's exactly 100. Nun Jingyi was stunned and asked curiously, no more, no less? Yes. Ren Xiaoyao, is it this number? Sect leader, I also found it strange. After exterminating the pack of blood wolves, I realized it was the right number. Therefore, I came back as soon as possible. Zhang Xiaohua pushed all responsibility away. Well, all of you can leave. After the disciples from Ruijin Palace left, Nun Jingyi smiled and said, Ren Xiaoyao Zixia, you passed the 3 tests of love. I have nothing to say and allow you to be together. Zixia was happy and immediately bowed. Zhang Xiaohua also bowed and said, Thank you for your gift, sect leader. No need to thank me, no need to thank me. Isn't the marriage given by the heavens enough for you to be proud of? What right does my sect have to interfere? Even the others won't interfere. Nun Jingyi pointed out. Nun Jinggang did not say anything, but Shimujuan's face was a little ugly. Then, I'll leave now and go down the mountain to recuperate. My injuries are not light after running around just now. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and was about to leave. You still want to go back to Lihua Palace? Chen was surprised and said, If you go back to Lihua Palace, what about Zixia? Don't tell me you still want to run up and down the mountain? When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he also scratched his head. How would he know what to do next? Meng's forehead was full of red clouds. -4. Chapter 885. Nun Jingyi smiled. Lingering Fragrance Peak hasn't had a disciple as courageous and responsible as Ren Xiaoyao for many years. Ren Xiaoyao has set a precedent. Moreover, Ren Xiaoyao was born with divine strength. Ever since he joined our fragrance order, he has made great contributions in a short period of time. It is because the heavens have blessed our fragrance order that we have decided to choose Ren Xiaoyao as our protector disciple. What do you all think? Nun Jingfan clapped her hands after hearing this. Leader's decision is great. The protector Skunda of the Dalan Temple's legend has divine strength in both arms and wields a demon-subduing pestle. Ren Xiaoyao has the same divine strength, and the sword embryo in his hand is similar to the demon-subduing pestle. He is the most suitable candidate for this protector disciple position. Nun Jinggang shook her head. Ruijin Temple's disciples are all peak protectors. I have never heard of a protector disciple. Based on junior sister Jingfan's words, this protector disciple's position is higher than both peak protectors and sect protectors. How can we accept this? Although Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are good, he is still lacking compared to Hu Ben and Ming Qing. Not to mention Hu Ben, he is not worthy of this protector position. Nun Shuizhen also expressed her opinion. Ren Xiaoyao's position as an alchemy disciple of distant Fire Hall is too low. It cannot be compared to his position as a disciple of Zi Xiaomo Nong Palace. Leader's decision to make Ren Xiaoyao a protector disciple is to fulfill his wish. I think it is appropriate. Nun Jingyi looked at Peacock and the rest and asked, "What do you all think?" Peacock thought for a moment and said, "Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are limited. His position is higher than others and I am afraid it will be difficult to convince the others. However, this protector-disciple position can be set as an empty position and be incorporated into Mo Nong Palace. It will only be under the leader's jurisdiction. It does not have any real power and does not command other disciples. Its position can be lower than that of a protector disciple." Nun Jingyi smiled. "Yes, Peacock's suggestion is good. Let's do it this way. Ren Xiaoyao will be a protector disciple of Fragrance Order and be included in the ranks of Mo Nong Palace's disciples. He will only be under the leader's orders and will not interfere with the affairs of other halls." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was overjoyed. Wasn't it just an easy job? She could still meet the dream frequently, and do nothing. Wasn't that the Peacock's intention? Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, sect leader. All right, since you know how to be grateful, then you need to practice martial arts more in the future. I see that you are still young. In the past, you didn't have the opportunity to practice profound internal energy. Now that you have entered Mo Xiangong, you can read all the martial arts manuals of the fragrant cult. I hope that you will soon succeed in your martial arts and contribute to the fragrant cult." Zhang Xiaohua nodded in agreement. After bidding farewell to everyone, Zhang Xiaohua was about to leave Mo Xian Palace when she suddenly thought of something. She unconsciously walked in front of Nun Jingyi and asked, "Esteemed hierarch, this disciple has something that I don't know if I should say." Nun Jingyi was in a good mood. She smiled and said, "Let's hear it." Zhang Xiaohua hesitated for a moment, then cupped her hands and said, "This disciple missed Meng Xian so much that the way I found her was a bit inappropriate. I didn't tell Rejuvenation Valley's Valley Master Nye the truth. I only told him that I admired the fragrant cult's martial arts and wanted to devote myself to martial arts." Valley Master Nye, he had no choice but to help this disciple, so what? Nun Jingyi said coldly. "So you want the cult to reduce the punishment for Rejuvenation Valley? Rejuvenation Valley has been sheltered by the fragrant cult all these years. I don't know how many dangers they have safely passed through in Jianghu. Rejuvenation Valley should have fulfilled their duties and provided qualified medicine boys to the cult according to the agreement. But this time, because of you, they have engaged in malpractice for personal gain. Although this kind of behavior is the behavior of a good person, it has broken the rules. When the mountain opens next time, they will be severely punished." Zhang Xiaohua said in shock, "Esteemed hierarch, this disciple is stupid. This is all my fault. I used your kindness to threaten Valley Master Nye. I hope esteemed hierarch will reconsider." "Reconsider?" Nun Jingyi said coldly. "What's there to reconsider about this kind of thing? Your kindness to Rejuvenation Valley is a private matter between the two of you. You shouldn't drag the fragrant cult into it. You have little experience in Jianghu and don't know the rules of the fragrant cult. You can be considered not guilty because you don't know. But how many years has Rejuvenation Valley been in Jianghu? Don't you know this kind of common sense? Maybe it's because the fragrant cult hasn't spoken much in Jianghu all these years that they feel lucky and have slighted us." Zhang Xiaohua was even more shocked. According to Nun Jingyi's words, she was angry that he was able to sneak into the fragrant cult. She seemed to want to make an example out of Rejuvenation Valley. If that was the case, wouldn't he have implicated them? Wouldn't little fish Nye be like in the fantasy realm and be? Meng Xian's heart ached when she saw Zhang Xiaohua's forehead sweating. She didn't dare to speak and didn't know what to say. At this moment, Peacock opened her mouth and said with a smile, "Sect leader is indeed wise." She then changed the topic. However, Ren Xiaoyao and Zixiao are the destined marriage of heaven. It should be heaven's good intention to send Ren Xiaoyao to lingering Fragrance Peak. Although Rejuvenation Valley made a mistake, it is still according to heaven's will. Disciple just thought that Rejuvenation Valley hasn't made a mistake for thousands of years. Why would they have to make a mistake when it comes to Ren Xiaoyao? Perhaps that's the reason. Lord Sect Master is wise and will naturally be able to comprehend the will of heaven. This disciple will not say more. Moreover, Lord Sect Master said just now that to be a good person, one must do it within one's duties. Rejuvenation Valley's punishment is unavoidable. If Lord Sect Master is a good person, then wouldn't it be even better? If it was someone else who spoke, Jingyi Nun might not have listened. However, Peacock had just received her inheritance, and was a candidate for the next sect leader. Jingyi Nun had some training, so she had to listen to her words. After thinking for a while, she smiled and said, Peacock's words are true. If Rejuvenation Valley didn't play favoritism, how could we be happy today? How could Zixiao have met Ren Xiaoyao? Fine, I'll be a good person just this once. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and bowed. Thank you, sect leader. Thank you, Lord Kong. Don't be in such a hurry to thank me. Jingyi Nun waved her hand. There will be punishment, but you have to bear the lighter part. After all, you were the one who caused this. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. That's right. Disciple is willing to accept the punishment. Go back first. We'll talk again after you've recovered. Zhang Xiaohua and Meng Xian left Mo Xian Palace. There were disciples to take care of Zhang Xiaohua. Not long after, Jing Gang and the others also came out. Only Peacock, Chen Qin, and Yu Yan stayed in the palace. Presumably, Jingyi Nun had something else to tell them. Mo Xian Palace was full of female disciples. There were probably no male disciples like Zhang Xiaohua. However, he was now a guardian disciple of Mo Xian Palace. There was a problem with his placement. However, there were many courtyards in Mo Xian Palace. It didn't take much effort to find one near Ruijin Palace. The good thing was that this remote courtyard was actually quite close to Meng Xian's residence. If it wasn't intentional, then no one would believe it. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua was very grateful to Nun Xuezhen, who was in charge of this matter. Not to mention that Zhang Xiaohua stayed in Mo Xian Palace's courtyard to recuperate. Jing Gang and Shimujuan sat quietly in Ruijin Palace. The atmosphere was very gloomy. Shimujuan looked different from before. However, this difference was not something that could be seen by ordinary people. His face was as calm as water, his forehead was still wise, and his bearing was still graceful. It was exactly the same as usual. Nun Jinggang coughed and said softly, Mujuan. Shimujuan did not answer. He waited for Jinggang to call him a few more times before he came to his senses. He smiled and said, Master, why did you call me? Nun Jinggang was a little worried. About Xixia. Since the hierarch has given his approval, let her go. Actually, I think you should have made preparations beforehand. This matter has been delayed by the hierarch for so long, so it's normal for there to be some changes. Moreover, Xixia knew Ren Xiaoyao before she entered the fragrance cult. You're not fated to be with Xixia. Shimujuan's eyes narrowed and he was a little jealous. But Ren Xiaoyao, how? How can he be worthy of junior sister Xixia? Sigh. Jinggang sighed. I knew you couldn't let it go. However, even if he's not worthy, as long as the hierarch says it's okay, then it's okay. You should give up. But, no buts. Jinggang was resolute and decisive. Moreover, that Ren Xiaoyao shouldn't cause trouble for her in the future. The hierarch had warned him in Mo Xian Palace just now. Master, don't be nervous. I know my limits. I won't do something so boring. Only third junior brother would do something like this. Oh, right. Where's Zhuqiuan? She hasn't shown up for a long time. Could something have happened? Wait for something to happen? Could it be that she got into some trouble and ran away because she doesn't dare to stay at Lingxiang Peak? Trouble? I haven't heard about it. Humph, when you hear about it, it'll be a big deal. Master, you should think carefully. Why don't you send someone out to take a look? Third junior brother hasn't been seen for many days. It's obvious that the trouble he's caused is not small. It's better to plan ahead and make plans early. Jing Gang was displeased. Zhuchuan may be playful, but he knows his limits. There were some disputes in the past, but it was all consensual. What's there to blame Zhuchuan for? I don't believe that he can cause any trouble this time. Humph, if he can also fight his way up Linxiang Peak and win over that peacock, I'll… Master, Peacock is now an inherited disciple. You should be careful with your words. Even if third junior brother provoked her, I don't think the hierarch would let him go like Yizixia. Oh, Master, speaking of which, third junior brother provoked Zhang Pinger from distant Fire Palace before the new year. Do you know about it? Jing Gang sneered. She's just a girl who doesn't like to talk. He heard about it from his disciples. Why? Could it be that Zhuchuan is hiding with her? Shimujuan shook his head. That's not the case. It's just that the girl had some things to say to Zhuchuan. Ever since secluded orchid twilight refinement, she has been cold. A few days ago, I heard some rumors and went to distant Fire Palace to look for third junior brother. What do you think I saw? Jing Gang was curious. What did you see? I saw that Ren Xiaoyao and Zhang Pinger were very intimate. They were walking side by side on the mountain path. Calm, there are more chapters. -4. Chapter 886. I know. Jing Gang said with great hatred. This Zhang Pinger is the Zhang Pinger that Ren Xiaoyao mentioned to cult leader in front of the hall today. At that time, I felt that this name was familiar, but I didn't expect it to be the Zhang Pinger that has some connection to Zhuchuan. That's right. Master, do you know that Ren Xiaoyao has always been used to interacting with women and using them to achieve his own goals? Didn't you see the third miss of Rejuvenation Valley? Wasn't it because he accompanied her from 1,000 miles away? A single man and a single woman together during the day and at night. Didn't anything happen? Otherwise, that Valley Master of Rejuvenation Valley isn't a fool. How could he send him to spreading fragrance cult? The whole story definitely wasn't what Ren Xiaoyao said. It should be that Valley Master Nye saw that he didn't have any reputation in Jianghu and recklessly married his daughter, which would provoke ridicule from Jianghu people. Therefore, he thought of a way to send him to my spreading fragrance cult. After he accomplished his skills and achieved a good reputation, he could smoothly take in a son-in-law. Previously, he met Zhang Pinger at the Valley Orchid Dusk. First, he was subdued by her beauty. Second, how could Rejuvenation Valley compare to the fiery hall of the inner sect? This time, he changed his mind and sought Zhang Pinger's heart. I don't know what method this guy used to make Zhang Pinger, who already had some interest in third martial brother, change her mind. He only persuaded Hall Master Yin and then incited cult leader to let this guy come to Lingering Fragrance Peak. Strange. Didn't they say that Yin was seriously ill and couldn't refine pills without a type of spiritual grass? Zhang Pinger's life was saved by the spiritual grass that Ren Xiaoyao picked in the Valley Orchid Dusk? Yin was grateful for her saving his life, so he transferred Ren Xiaoyao to Firely Hall? Who knows what happened in the Valley Orchid Dusk? We still don't know who picked the spiritual grass. This time, the Valley Orchid Dusk suffered heavy casualties. Although Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are good, he may not be able to escape unscathed. Moreover, I heard that there was a precedent like this in the pill-expanding hall. Our Lingering Fragrance Peak only bestowed a martial arts cultivation method and that was it. How could we be like Zhang Pinger, transferring a disciple from the outer sect to the inner sect? Who would believe that there's nothing fishy about it? Ren Xiaoyao said that he and Zixian knew each other a long time ago, but that's only the words of the two of them. Martial Uncle Jing Xian has already passed away, and there's no third person who knows about it. Isn't that just letting them talk nonsense? Disciple is sure that I don't know what methods this Ren Xiaoyao used or how he met Zixia and entered the alley. Alas, Disciple originally thought that Zixia was as pure as ice and as pure as jade. How could Jinggang Shirtai frowned slightly. And Xiaoyao has only been at Lingxiang Peak for a few days? Why did he do so many things? Even the heart of a female disciple from Mo Xian's palace was taken away? Mu Jun, your words are a little unreliable. Moreover, the sect leader has already approved Zi Xia and Ren Xiaoyao's relationship. You'd better not think too much about it. All right, master. Mu Jun stood up and saluted. Disciple wishes to take a few days off from Lingxiang Peak and go out for a walk. Master, please take care of the matters in the hall. Jinggang Shirtai smiled. Go. You're always in Ruijin Hall and haven't left Lingxiang Peak for a long time. It's good to take a breather. Remember, when it's time to let go, don't be too stubborn. Understood, master. Disciple is preparing to pack up and leave. All right, take it as a farewell now. Jinggang Shirtai was very willing for Mu Jun to leave the mountain. She even exhorted. Go out and walk around. Also, look for Zhuqiuan while you're at it. Ask him to hurry back. Is there any trouble on Lingxiang Peak that I can't handle? If the sect leader finds out that he's hiding like this, it'll be bad instead. Disciple understands. Mu Jun bowed and took his leave. Looking at his still tall and straight back, Jinggang Shirtai sighed for no reason. The full moon hung high in the sky, the croaking of frogs was endless, and the alluring night breeze brushed against one's face from time to time. Under a small pavilion under the tall weeping willow, there were two people sitting. One was dressed in a brocade robe, her thin figure elongated her shadow under the moonlight. It was Zhang Xiaohua. The other person, needless to say, was dressed in a light green palace robe. She had pleasant features and a pair of big watery eyes that were filled with affection. She stared straight at the full moon in the sky, as if she was thinking about something. Meng, what are you thinking about? Zhang Xiaohua looked at the beauty under the moon and smiled. Could it be that you're still praying for something? How did you know? Meng's eyes moved as she turned around and smiled. Are you really praying? Zhang Xiaohua said in surprise. Aren't I already by your side? What are you still thinking about? Pfft. Meng laughed and said shyly. You don't know how to be shy. You really think too highly of yourself. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head. That's for sure. If not for that, how could you still remember me after so many years? In your dreams? Meng rolled her eyes at him, then raised her head to look at the full moon that was almost within reach. She mumbled. Fate in this world is really strange. I didn't know that the meeting 5 years ago was still so vivid in my mind. I only saw you once, and it was engraved in my heart. I can't forget it. Zhang Xiaohua walked over and reached out to hold Meng's soft hand. A faint coolness came from Meng's hand. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly, but smiled. This is a marriage bestowed by the heavens. Then, he also stood beside Meng, side by side. He raised his head to look at the full moon and said, My heart is only yours. I'm the same as you. Since I saw you by the river, I can't forget you. I think about you day and night. Don't you think it's strange? Really? Meng raised her small face and said with slight anger. What about that little girl called Little Fish Nye? Haven't you thought about her? Zhang Xiaohua was embarrassed. He raised his hand and swore. In all honesty, I really only think about you. I've never thought about anyone else. Luckily, there was no real content in this oath. It didn't matter even if he said it thousands of times. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Meng anxiously. Meng glared at him. Haven't you seen that Xiaoxia from the Jianghu? He's willing to travel thousands of miles for a girl. If it's not for her beauty, what else can you explain? Besides, they're a single man and a single woman. Who knows what happened? In all honesty, Zhang Xiaohua used this word for the second time. Little Fish Nye is like a 12-year-old child. Everything. Meng caught him again. Look, you know she's like a 12-year-old child. Tell me, what haven't you seen? Zhang Xiaohua didn't know what to say. At this moment, he did think of Nye Qianyu. He could only smile apologetically. Isn't there still Little Orange? Even if I wanted to do something, would I dare? You've revealed your foxtail. Admit it. Say the truth in your heart. You. Or do you want to do something? In all honesty. Zhang Xiaohua used this word for the third time. I'm just making an example. Ha. Meng laughed when she saw Zhang Xiaohua so embarrassed and nervous. She laughed so happily that tears almost came out of her eyes. Her white and pure smile was like a blooming flower under the moonlight. Zhang Xiaohua also had a smile on her face as she happily looked at the face that she had missed day and night. After a while, Meng also held Zhang Xiaohua's hand and said faintly, Xiaohua, I feel like it was yesterday when I saw you, but this happiness is something I haven't felt in a long time. I really hope that I've been as happy as today for the past 5 years. Don't tell me you haven't been as happy as today for the past 5 years? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Sigh, yes. I only felt a little happy when I saw you half a month ago. Then why? Zhang Xiaohua blinked and smiled. Don't tell me you've been thinking about me all the time? Meng didn't blame Zhang Xiaohua this time, but shook her head slightly. After a while, she bit her lips and said, I don't know myself. I only feel that when I think about you, it's a kind of pain, but sometimes it's sweet. Of course, this is only one aspect. Zhang Xiaohua's heart ached. She held Meng's hand and said, I know, I feel the same way. I miss you so much, but there are some indescribable feelings. In addition, don't think too much about it. You've already told me about Abbess Jingxian's matter. This matter isn't something you can do alone. In the past, when I wasn't by your side, your heart was tormented. In the future, when you have me, let me shoulder this matter. You must not do the same foolish thing as last time. Just thinking about it is dangerous. If I didn't have telepathy with you, how could I have killed my way to Lingering Fragrance Peak? If you take that guy's purple phoenix hairpin, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You don't blame me, I've clearly seen you, and I still want to. Meng's voice became softer. You saw that guy threaten me, and you're afraid that I'll be hurt. Moreover, you did this for your master's revenge. How can I bear to blame you? Zhang Xiaohua said lovingly. But in the future, even if I'm dizzy, I can't do such a stupid thing. Otherwise, even if Lingering Fragrance Peak is Shirtai's master, I'll still turn it upside down. Do you have that ability? Meng smiled and then murmured, If only you had that ability. Humph. Zhang Xiaohua pretended to be angry. Do you look down on me because my martial arts are not as good as that guy's? I'll go find that guy and have a duel. She was about to take her hand away from Meng's. No. Meng knew that she was pretending, but she was flustered for no reason. She clenched her hand and smiled. Xiaohua's martial arts are the best. Others may not know, but how can I not know? Of course, with me by your side, you can go anywhere in the world. I know. Meng laughed out loud, but then there was a hint of sadness. How could Zhang Xiaohua not see it? She whispered, It's okay, Meng. Hierarch His Excellency just asked me to go to the ruins of Huanyu to have a look. It's not a punishment. I'm not thinking about this. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Then what is it? Meng hesitated and said, Xiaohua, have you ever had any strange dreams? Dreams? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and shook her head. I haven't dreamed for a long time. You've never dreamed before? Meng De asked curiously. I have a dream in my heart. Who would still want to dream? -4. Chapter 887. Meng stomped her feet and rebuked. Xiaohua, I'm serious, don't interrupt. Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said with a smile. Okay, you say it. However, she said again. I'm serious, I'm not interrupting. I haven't dreamed for a long time. Meng looked up at Zhang Xiaohua and said with a smile. You're a strange person. I've never heard anyone say that they don't dream. If I don't dream like you, how good would it be? Really? Zhang Xiaohua frowned. What kind of strange dreams do you have? Why are you so scared? Meng bit her lips and said, Actually, I don't remember these strange dreams very well. I just feel that the dreams are very real. For example, when I kill someone, I can feel the smell of blood, hee hee. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Can you kill someone? I think you don't even dare to kill a chicken. Really? Meng was afraid that Zhang Xiaohua didn't believe her, so she said, Not only killing people, there are many other things. Well, I know. Zhang Xiaohua held Meng's hand tightly and nodded. I believe you, Meng. It's said that what you think in the day, you dream at night. It's true. Maybe because you think too much and can't do too much, what you think in the day will be brought into your dreams. Really? Meng didn't believe it. She thought carefully and nodded. Maybe. Master. I had a lot of dreams in the days after Master died. I miss Master so much that I can't wait to catch the murderer who killed Master. Well, I know, Meng. You don't have to worry about Shirt Eye. I have sworn to God that I will catch the murderer with my own hands. No. I will kill the murderer with my own hands to avenge Shirt Eye. In fact, Zhang Xiaohua had seen Deputy Hall Leader Su of Tuodin Hall and O Yan's illness. She had a faint feeling that there was some inevitable connection between them and Shirt Eye's death. Maybe it was the doing of the spring equinox and Jingzhe organization. She didn't plan to do anything to them before because she didn't have a good impression of the fragrant cult. Those people muddying the water, on the contrary, was beneficial to her actions. But now, the hated Zhong Pei was unexpectedly struck to death by lightning. She met Meng as she wished, and was even with her now. She didn't have to worry about the Shixing Peak because Zhang Xiaohu was there to take care of it. She basically had nothing to worry about. Besides, Shirt Eye had saved her life. If these people had something to do with Shirt Eye's death, how could she not intervene? Alas, Meng still couldn't believe her and sighed. Of course I meant it, but your kung fu is too weak. Zhang Xiaohua's heart warmed. He wanted to tell her the truth, but when he was about to say it, he had an idea. If I say it now, Meng's heart will be at ease. But after all, there is still no clue. If I kill the murderer with my own hands in the future and give her a surprise, wouldn't that be great? Thus, Zhang Xiaohua shrugged again and said, Don't worry, in the entire Lingxiang Peak, only you and I truly want to avenge Shirt Eye. Her spirit in heaven will definitely bless me and let my kung fu improve by leaps and bounds. And she will also give me the ability to communicate with spirits and tell me who the murderer is. Haha, I know. Meng smiled, knowing that Zhang Xiaohua was comforting him. He only said, You should practice martial arts in a down-to-earth manner. I only hope that one day you can catch up to that Shimujuan. I'll be satisfied. That tramp is nothing. TSK, how can he be my opponent? If I wasn't afraid that he would lose face in front of the hierarch, I would have broken his nose long ago. Pfft. Meng couldn't help but laugh. Only you can brag. Hee hee, as long as you like it. Zhang Xiaohua said in a silly manner. Oh, right. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. He looked around and whispered, Meng, do you think it's strange? Meng's curiosity was piqued and her melancholy was swept away. What's strange? Don't you think it's strange? Damn, how would I know if you don't tell me? Alas, don't you think that a month ago in Mo Xian's palace, we passed, it was too easy? Hee hee, I thought you were going to say something. Meng covered her mouth and laughed. I thought you felt good. I didn't even think about it. Of course, I have a little bit of self-awareness. At that time, I thought it was because the hierarch doted on you. Later, I felt that it wasn't entirely true. Maybe there was something I didn't know. Shh. Meng heard this and a strange expression appeared on her face. She looked around and whispered. Later, I secretly asked Senior Sister Chen. She didn't know either. However, you also know that she is very curious. Later, she secretly asked Abbess Jingfan. After listening to Senior Sister Chen's words, I found out that the hierarch was really merciful that day. Zhang Xiaohua was also very surprised. She lowered her voice. Quickly, quickly tell me. Ahem, ahem. Meng looked around and coughed twice. Alas, these few days of practice have been very tiring. My waist and shoulders are also sore. There are some things that I can't remember clearly. Zhang Xiaohua curled her lips and pulled Meng to the stone bench. She smiled and said, Oh, senior sister Xia, it turns out that you are tired. Earlier, I learned some massage techniques outside. If senior sister doesn't mind, I can give you a massage. Meng nodded slightly. At least you have good eyesight. Well, come and try it. I want to see how much you have learned. Of course, I am the smart Zhang Xiaohua. I can learn it easily. Zhang Xiaohua said and stretched out her hands with a strange smile on her face. Ha 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 ha. Meng couldn't help but laugh. She was almost out of breath and said intermittently, this is massage. Of course, it is the authentic Zhang's massage. Zhang Xiaohua said seriously. Okay, I admit defeat. I will tell you the reason right away. Meng couldn't help but beg for mercy. At this moment, he heard Zhang Xiaohua exclaim, What is this? Why is there a bulge in your armpit? What is it? And it is soft? Meng said shyly. Your hand, where are you putting it? Quickly take it away, ah! Zhang Xiaohua was also shocked. He exerted a little force in his hand and immediately knew where he was touching the dream. Zhang Xiaohua was still young and was not very clear about the relationship between men and women. Even when she was chatting with Peacock and Chin in the refining heart cave, it was, how should she put it, she touched Meng from the front. At this time, she only scratched Meng's armpit from the back. How would she know that there was something shameful in the front? Zhang Xiaohua quickly let go of her hand and said with a red face, I didn't do it on purpose. Meng's face was also burning. After a long time, she whispered, It's okay. That's right, quickly tell me, why did the leader let you go that day? Zhang Xiaohua quickly changed the topic. He, Meng laughed. Actually, it is related to the leader's past. How should I put it? Back then, when the leader was young, she was a famous beauty in Emotian Palace. In the Greenwood Palace, there was also a handsome disciple who was skilled in martial arts. Senior Sister Chen didn't mention his name. This disciple had been admiring the leader for a long time. At that time, the leader hadn't received the inheritance yet, so she had a good impression of this disciple. The two of them were together under the moon, so there is no need to talk about it. Later on, that disciple found out about the story of the fragrant religion's Lingxiang Peak and discussed it with the leader. They fought from Lingxiang Peak all the way to Emotian Palace. At that time, the leader understood. Although she was very reluctant to part with our leader, she had to follow the precedent and let them pass the 3 tests. What was the result? Zhang Xiaohua was very curious. What result? Right now, the leader belongs to the leader. What good result can there be? Meng said in annoyance. Could it be that the leader went back on her words and didn't jump off the sacrificial cliff? Zhang Xiaohua asked. The martyred love cliff's leader naturally jumped, but... At this point, Zhang Xiaohua naturally already knew, and said regretfully. Sigh, could it be that that brother was like me, encountering Orchid Twilight, and the disciples of Emotian Palace killed all the beasts in the testing love forest one step ahead? Meng was surprised when she heard this and asked. Killed all the beasts? Xiaohua, then where did your 100 blood wolf tails come from? Is there even a need to ask? Zhang Xiaohua patted her chest and said, Our marriage is a gift from the heavens. I'm the blood wolf's tail. Keep bragging. Meng rolled her eyes at him and continued. The year your Greenwood Palace's disciple entered the Passion Forest wasn't the year of the orchid's late refinement. It's just that. Alas, it's just a pity. Although there were many wild beasts in the Passion Forest, but your disciple only managed to kill 99 blood wolves in the time it took for 3 incense sticks to burn. No way. Zhang Xiaohua's face was full of surprise. That's 99 blood wolf tails, but there's only one left. Yes, that's right. Meng nodded with certainty. It's because of this last tale that the leader didn't get together with that disciple. Then, what about that disciple? Zhang Xiaohua also wanted to get to the bottom of this matter. Now, is he still in the Greenwood Palace? No, that disciple failed the 3 tests and felt that it was the will of the heavens. He was disheartened and stayed in the Lingxiang Peak for half a year, then went down the mountain. No one knows where he went. The fragrant cult is only so big, so we couldn't find him. And according to the disciples, when the Jinghai Lake opened, we didn't see him go out. He just mysteriously disappeared like that. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and thought of Yu Zhuqiyuan, whose body he destroyed. Didn't the leader try to find him? Of course he did, but in the 2nd year, the leader passed the direct selection and received the inheritance. He didn't have the time or the opportunity to find him. Yes, I understand. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. It's because the leader has such a regret in his heart that he values the marriage given by the heavens so much. That's right, otherwise, how could we pass so easily? Meng murmured. -4. Chapter 888. With the red sun hanging high in the sky, Zhang Xiaohua, dressed in a brand new outfit, walked out of the small courtyard with Huan in one hand and the Prajna sword in the other. Outside the small courtyard, Meng was standing with a smile. When Zhang Xiaohua saw her, he couldn't help but smile. Didn't you say goodbye yesterday? You don't have to send me off. I'm just going out for a walk. The hierarch only asked me to find someone to help me. It's not dangerous. Meng tilted her head and frowned slightly. I don't know why, but I feel reluctant to part with you. So I'll send you off. Zhang Xiaohua looked around and said nervously. Isn't it too ostentatious? Will the other senior sisters in Mo's Xian Palace be jealous? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's exaggerated look, Meng almost bent over with laughter again. She covered her mouth and said, Little Xiao Yao, who do you think you are? Which other senior sister will like you? Don't feel so good about yourself. Zhang Xiaohua touched his flat nose and said seriously, I don't want others to be jealous of you. It's just that they will be jealous of our marriage. Meng pursed her lips and said with a smile, All right, don't talk nonsense. Although there isn't much danger in this trip to the ruins of Huanyu, if you can make some contributions, firstly, it can prove that the hierarch has a good eye and that you're a competent guardian disciple. Secondly, it can be considered as redeeming yourself by making contributions. The greater the contribution, the lesser the punishment Rejuvenation Valley will receive. Valley Master Nia has already given his daughter to you. How can you bring disaster to him? Gosh, Zhang Xiaohua was embarrassed. He had explained Nie Qianyu's matter clearly to Meng during this month, but Meng always joked about it. Meng could joke about it, but he didn't dare to take it seriously. If he even slightly joked, Meng would immediately change her face. She was even more powerful than Chen Chen. Zhang Xiaohua was thinking about what to say, but Meng didn't listen to his explanation at all. She walked forward and adjusted his clothes. Zhang Xiaohua's heart was filled with warmth. It seemed that only his mother cared about him like this before. Meng, I really have nothing to do with Nie Qianyu. Meng was stunned and asked curiously. You've said that 472 times already. I believed you a long time ago. Why are you bringing it up again? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. But didn't you just? Dream said. I'm just saying. Is there a relationship between you two? If there's nothing between you two, why don't I talk about it? Zhang Xiaohua was at a loss for words and wanted to explain again. However, Meng said, Let's go. It's already late. You should leave early and come back early. I want you to come back at night. Evening? Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and thought to herself. Although I haven't been to the ruins of Huan, it seems that it will take a few days. How can I return at night? When they walked out of the small courtyard, they still held hands. But later, more and more disciples came. Not only Meng, but also Zhang Xiaohua was embarrassed. These beautiful female disciples, whether wearing a veil or not, all looked at them with a smile. It was not admiration, but jealousy. Meng hid in Zhang Xiaohua's remote courtyard and enjoyed the nourishment of love. She was free and unfettered. Now that she was surrounded by so many people, although she was proud and stubborn, she still had the mentality of a little girl. Besides being slightly happy, she was abnormally shy. She only walked half the way and blushed and ran away. Behind her, Zhang Xiaohua's face was also burning. She complained secretly. "I told you not to come, but you came to see me. It's like watching a monkey." After Meng left, Zhang Xiaohua was emboldened. No matter who looked at him, he stared straight at them. This trick was really good. The female disciples all bowed their heads and left under his stare. When Zhang Xiaohua was complacent, he saw a female disciple in a lavender palace dress looking at him from a distance. Zhang Xiaohua squinted and thought, "There's really someone who doesn't know what's good for her." He also tilted his head and stared at her. Unexpectedly, the female disciple didn't avoid him and came straight to him. "Oh, I actually met a rival. Who is so thick-skinned?" When the female disciple came closer, Zhang Xiaohua saw her clearly. He quickly lowered his head and saluted. "Greetings, Lord Chen." Wasn't it Chen Chen? Although Zhang Xiaohua lowered his head, he muttered in his heart, "When did this girl dress up so elegantly? I almost can't recognize her." Chen Chen said in a low voice, "Hee, junior brother Ren, you are now a disciple of Mo Xiangong. Although, you don't need to call me Lord Chen. You can just call me senior sister in the future." "Yes, Lord Chen." Zhang Xiaohua nodded. "Oh, senior sister Chen. I wonder where senior sister Chen is heading to? Oh, I woke up early this morning and just happened to see you. Looking at your new clothes and the four odd beasts, I guess you are going down the mountain to Huanyu. So I came over to give you some instructions." "Yes, I am going there. Senior sister Chen, please instruct me." Cough cough, actually, it's nothing much. The ruins of Huan is a forbidden area of my fragrant sect. I'm sure the sect leader has already told you about it. Your martial arts are limited, especially your Qigong. Inside the ruins of Huan, you must not go too deep, you only need to wait outside for the disciples of Mo Xiangong. About Rejuvenation Valley, I've told Senior Sister Kong about it. Right now, Lord Sect Master is still angry, so it's not suitable for her to speak directly. After this period of time, I'll have Senior Sister talk to Lord Sect Master. After all, she was also the messenger who went to Vow City to offer sacrifices last time. Also, there is a female disciple among the disciples going to Huanyu this time. You should be familiar with her. She is Xia Qing, who entered the fragrant cult with us last time. They have been there for a long time. Maybe they had some adventures. If you meet her, tell her. Maybe she will give you some benefits." Zhang Xiaohua heard this and felt warm in her heart. This expression was somewhat similar to the illusion in the refining heart cave. After hearing Chen Chen's words, she bowed and thanked him. "Well, go. Go and come back early. Don't let Junior Sister Zixia worry about you." Chen Chen waved his hand and left. After taking 2 steps, he turned back and said with a smile, "Remember what I told you at Shixin Peak. If you have any secret marks on your body, check it as soon as possible. Don't wait for little Fishnyet to come and make trouble for you." Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. She looked at Chen Chen's back, which was shaking with laughter. She opened her mouth and did not know how to answer. After exiting Mo Xian Palace, Zhang Xiaohua arrived at Ruijin Palace. Coincidentally, he ran into Ruijin Palace's senior martial brother Wei. Thinking about how he had broken Ruijin Palace's sword and snatched his waist token, Zhang Xiaohua felt a little guilty. He stepped forward and shouted, "Senior martial brother Wei, please wait." Senior brother Wei was leading people down the mountain to patrol. When he heard someone calling him, he naturally turned back. However, when he saw that it was Zhang Xiaohua, his face immediately became awkward. He turned back and saluted. "Junior brother Ren, you. What's the matter?" Zhang Xiaohua quickly stepped forward and also saluted. "Senior brother Wei, that. I'm really sorry about last time. I was also in a hurry to go up the mountain, so I made a move. That, I hope Senior Brother can be magnanimous and forgive me. What could Senior Marshal Brother Wei say? Zhang Xiaohua had barged into Remnant Fragrance alone with a sword and had long caused a huge commotion. He had turned Ruijin Palace Hall into a complete mess. Nun Jinggang did not say anything, but Shi Mujuan had scolded everyone. Although he could not punish these disciples due to the teachings of Remnant Fragrance cult, he reckoned that they had suffered quite a lot. It's fine. Junior Brother Ren's courage and insight are astonishing. His martial arts are also superb. In addition, he is unswervingly loyal to Senior Sister Zi Xia. He is our role model. I can't wait to be envious. How can I blame you? Since Senior Brother Wei said so, I can rest assured. If there is a chance, I will tell the group of senior brothers in Ruijin Palace that I will apologize to them. Zhang Xiaohua then took out a waist token and handed it over. This is what I used last time. I'm returning it to Senior Brother Wei. Senior Brother Wei took a look and reached out to take it with lightning speed. He smiled and said, "This waist token has already lost its effect. To think that Junior Brother Ren still remembers it." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and secretly said, "It's already lost its effect. Why are you in such a hurry to take it back?" Senior Brother Wei was naturally unwilling to travel with Zhang Xiaohua. Along the way, the Ruijin Palace disciples they met all had the same expression. They were jealous, envious, and a little embarrassed. Zhang Xiaohua did not mind. She sat on Huan's lap and cupped her hands when she saw some familiar faces. She had already offended them a lot. Zhang Xiaohua was still aware of these trivial etiquette. Suddenly, a figure flashed behind the mountain rocks on the mountain path. It seemed like the person saw Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were sharp and she had already seen it. It was Zhang Pinger from Lihua Hall. Looking at this place, they were already in Lihua Hall's territory. Zhang Pinger must have something to do. Zhang Xiaohua patted Huan's protrusion and stopped. She looked at the mountain rocks by the mountain path and thought for a moment. She felt that she had something to say to Huan, but if she really said it, it would be unnecessary. She sighed and wanted to go down the mountain. However, she saw Zhang Pinger peeking out from behind the mountain rocks and looking down the mountain. When she saw that there was no one at the foot of the mountain, it seemed like Zhang Xiaohua had gone far away. Zhang Pinger then leaped out from behind the mountain rocks. However, when she turned her head, she saw Zhang Xiaohua standing beside her awkwardly. She couldn't help but blush. However, it only lasted for a moment before Zhang Pinger's face turned cold. She was the ice beauty of Lihua Hall. Zhang Xiaohua bit her lips and cupped her hands. "Junior sister." Zhang Pinger quickly stopped him and said coldly, "Senior Brother Rin is wrong. It's better to call her junior sister Zhang. Your surname isn't Zhang, so calling her junior sister is a little too much." Zhang Xiaohua sighed and said softly, "Junior sister Zhang, I think it's useless for me to say anything unnecessary. Actually, I didn't know that Zi Xia was at Lingxiang Peak, so I never had the intention to make use of junior sister. If junior sister has misunderstood or caused some trouble for junior sister, then I will apologize to junior sister now. I don't dare. Senior Brother Rin is the protector disciple of Mo Xian Palace. How could I, a disciple of Lihua Palace, compare to him? Even if we were used, it would be our honor. How could I dare to complain? How can I complain and dare to accept the apology of a disciple of Mo Xian Palace?" Zhang Xiaohua felt a little uncomfortable with this vague sense of unfamiliarity. -4. Chapter 889. With a sigh, Zhang Xiaohua continued. "Also, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely give Deputy Hall Master Yin an explanation for the trouble I've caused." "No need." Zhang Pinger was resolute and decisive. "Master said that there's a saying in ancient times, a general's success is built on thousands of bones. Although Senior Brother Ren didn't go too far, for the sake of the marriage between you and Senior Sister Zi Xia, it's also God's arrangement for us to receive some punishment. Seeing Zhang Pinger's indifference, Zhang Xiaohua had nothing to say and could only cup his hands to bid farewell. Junior sister, perhaps you won't like what I say, but I'll remember everything that junior sister has done. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely repay you. Forget it. Zhang Pinger's face was frosty. Senior brother Ren, you'd better take care of senior sister Xia first. As she spoke, she took out a jade box from her bosom and handed it over. What's this? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously and didn't take it. This is the origin returning grass that senior brother Ren asked for when you came to the distant fire hall. I asked senior brother Ren for it from martial uncle. Please accept it. Ah? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly waved his hand. Junior sister, I was just joking with you. You really took it seriously? Zhang Pinger's expression changed greatly. She threw the jade box into Zhang Xiaohua's arms and said angrily, Senior brother Ren, I'll say it again. Please call me junior sister Zhang. Also, there are some things that can't be said and some things that can't be done. Since I said it and did it, then I have to take it seriously. I'm stupid and can't distinguish between what senior brother Ren said and what senior brother Ren said. Therefore, I take everything seriously. If senior brother Ren has the leisure to joke with me next time, please tell me in advance. Then, I'll be in high spirits and joke with senior brother Ren. After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Zhang Xiaohua's reaction and walked to the other side of the mountain path. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's back, which did not even turn back, Zhang Xiaohua did not know what she was feeling. She patted Huan Huan's protruding horn and walked down the main mountain path of Lingering Fragrance Peak. It did not take long for them to reach the bottom of Lingering Fragrance Peak. The protective array of the peak was still there, but when Zhang Xiaohua entered and exited, there was a world of difference. The rough stone tablet at the foot of Lingering Fragrance Peak was still the same. It stood there quietly by itself. Zhang Xiaohua looked back at the towering Lingering Fragrance Peak and smiled. She released her divine sense and wrapped it around the rough stone tablet to observe it carefully. Unfortunately, after observing it for a while, there were no clues. Zhang Xiaohua patted Huan Huan and walked down one of the many mountain paths at the foot of Lingering Fragrance Peak. In Emotian Palace, Nun Jingyi held a scroll in her hand and read it with great interest. A disciple quietly walked in and stood by her side. After a long time, Nun Jingyi did not raise her head and asked, Ren Xiaoyao has left the mountain? Yes. What has this disciple of Emotian Palace been doing during this period of time? Reporting to sect leader, Ren Xiaoyao has always been with senior sister Xia. There's nothing strange about them. Looking at the two of them, it seems that they have known each other for a long time. It's impossible for them to be so close after just a few days. It seems that what they said was true. This Ren Xiaoyao is really infatuated. He actually chased her all the way to Emotian Palace from Jianghu. Moreover, our fragrant religion's rules are so strict, yet he was able to coincidentally come to Lingering Fragrance Peak to see Xia. If our religion does not fulfill his wish, even the heavens will be angry. Sect leader is the most benevolent, we all know that. The disciple smiled and said, If Ren Xiaoyao met other sect leaders, he might not be able to fulfill his wish. This Ren Xiaoyao is also a genius. His martial arts are not good, and his moves are not good, but he is blessed with divine strength. It's really rare. It's just that, when he heard that Xia had died that day, he still held his sword and threatened our religion. He still has a rebellious side to him. I hope this trip to Huansu will make him suffer a little and let him know the dignity of our fragrant religion. The disciple smiled and said, Sect leader is right. No matter what, Ren Xiaoyao has only been in our fragrant religion for a short period of time. How could he know the background of our religion? Using his sword to threaten the sect leader is also a great disrespect. Nun Jingyi waved her hand. Why would our religion lower itself to his level? Oh, right, where's Shimujuan? This child was agitated. He wouldn't do something stupid, would he? That's not true. The day Ren Xiaoyao stayed in Emotian Palace, senior martial brother, she left Lingering Fragrance Peak and went out to travel. Hee, what travel? He's only in the fragrant religion's small territory. Where can he travel to? However, he's also tactful. Sigh, actually, when Great Elder came to me to talk about this, our religion felt that it was inappropriate. Xixia clearly doesn't have Mu Jun in her eyes. In addition, Xixia wanted to take revenge for junior martial sister Jing Xian on her own accord and created this scene. How can Mu Jun keep his face? Mu Jun still knows when to advance and when to retreat. It's all because of Great Elder Jing Gang's teachings. Oh, right, where's Yuzhuichun? There's still no trace of her? What kind of trouble did this fellow get into? Even you don't know? Sigh, you all have the same master. Why is there such a big difference between the two? The female disciple was embarrassed. This time, this disciple really doesn't know. After Junior Martial Brother Yu returned to Lingering Fragrance Peak, he only showed his face once and disappeared without a trace. It can't be the Tenria sect or that strange power, right? The female disciple shook her head. It can't be ruled out. After all, many things have happened in our fragrant religion recently. The Vice Hall Masters of Pill Sprouting Hall and Cleansing Jade Hall, as well as more than 10 outer sect disciples, have all disappeared. And, with the addition of Wandering Orchid and Mulien, it's really hard to say. However, the possibility of it being Junior Martial Brother Yu isn't high. After all, he has a legacy artifact from our fragrant religion. Although he can't use it proficiently, it's still possible that he could use it to escape. The Vice Hall Master of Pill Sprouting Hall? This guy actually sneaked into the fragrant religion without our religion knowing. If he hadn't provoked the Tenria sect and poisoned him to death, it would have been hard to find him. Oh, the Vice Hall Master of Pill Sprouting Hall should also have a jade talisman. However, Zhuokun should have an offensive jade talisman, so he should be able to escape. Right, speaking of the Pill Sprouting Hall, go and inform Sage Herb. Who went to Rejuvenation Valley last time? Cripple his martial arts and demote him to an ordinary disciple. Yes, I'll do it right away. But what? I think that senior martial sister Peacock went to Sorrow's City to offer sacrifices last time. She was the head emissary, and that person was the vice emissary. If we cripple that person's martial arts, won't senior martial sister Peacock lose face? Oh, you're right. Peacock's status is different now. If it was before the inheritance, it wouldn't be a problem. But now, we still have to save some face. That disciple is lucky. Demote him to an ordinary disciple, but don't cripple his martial arts. Yes, head emissary is wise. Also, inform the fragrant religion disciples in the Jianghu to not stand up for Rejuvenation Valley for 10 years. Spread this news to the Jianghu as well. Instead of doing things for our fragrant religion, they actually dared to play favoritism. It's their good fortune that we don't destroy them. Yes, head emissary is merciful. The female disciple bowed. Seeing that Nun Jingyi didn't say anything else, she quietly left. Zhang Xiaohua went down Lingering Fragrance Peak and headed towards Wanxiu. However, after walking for half a day and passing a few forks in the road, his brain couldn't keep up. He had asked for directions, but he was a person with no sense of direction. He only knew that the sun rose from the east and was careless about everything else. He could only stand at the side of the road and prepare to play left, right, and left. At this moment, he heard the sound of horses galloping behind him. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed. When he turned around, a strange smile appeared on his face. What do you think, head emissary? Dragging along the dust that filled the sky, the ones that whistled over were precisely Yu Zhuochuan's group that Zhang Xiaohua had encountered when he had arrived at Lingering Fragrance Peak the last time. It was still a dozen pure black horses that were abnormally arrogant. Of course, Yu Zhuochuan was not in this group at this time, and the leader had changed to someone else. When Zhang Xiaohua saw that it was an old acquaintance, he urged the 4 odd beasts to make way for them. When the group of Rui Jin Hall's disciples came closer, he smiled and prepared to greet them. However, when he raised his hand, one of the disciples shouted, "Ayo, it's Ren Xiaoyao." Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile. It seemed that he had become famous after breaking into Lingering Fragrance Peak. Others might not know, but the disciples of Ray Jean Hall remembered him well. When he turned around, he saw that it was the reckless disciple that he met last time, Junior Brother Fong. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. Senior Brother Fong, are you well? Then, he looked around and smiled. Where's Senior Brother Yu? Why don't I see him with you? Senior Brother Yu, long time no see. Just when Junior Brother Fong opened his mouth, someone beside him berated. Junior Brother Fong! Junior Brother Fong realized that he had blurted out, so he shouted. Why are you looking for Senior Brother Yu? When you broke into Lingering Fragrance Peak, we weren't around. Even Senior Brother Yu was busy. Otherwise, how could you have broken through so easily? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said. That's right. Actually, it was all thanks to the kindness of the senior brothers and martial uncles of Ray Jean Hall. They saw my painstaking effort and let me go. Others might not know, but I know very well. I really have to thank them. When the disciple heard that, he didn't have any good intentions. He cupped his hands and said, Junior Brother Ren's words have caused the sect leader to misunderstand. If she knows about it, she will think that the disciples of Ray Jean Hall are slacking. Some punishment will be unavoidable. Martial Uncle Ming, Martial Uncle Hu, and Martial Uncle Su will also be punished. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and said, Hee, then, just treat it as if I didn't say anything. The disciple frowned and sneered. If that's all Junior Brother Ren wanted to say, then I didn't hear anything. Junior Brother Ren, please make way. Let's part here. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Oh, I was ordered by the sect leader to go to the ruins of Huanshu. I don't know which path to take here. Senior Brother, please guide me. Ruins of Huanshu? The disciples looked at each other in surprise. The disciple in front muttered to himself and pointed with his finger. Junior Brother Ren is wrong to go to the ruins of Huanshu. He has to take this path. After listening to the disciple's explanation, Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. It turned out that he had already taken the wrong path. -4. Chapter 890. In the middle of a mountain covered by green trees, there was a huge peach tree beside a small lake. At this moment, thousands of pink peach blossoms were blooming on the peach tree. Under the peach tree, a middle-aged man in white was holding a long sword and waving it slowly. His sword moves were so slow that it was like an old man training in the morning. His footsteps were also ordinary. His footsteps were not light nor heavy, just like an ordinary person walking. However, every time the long sword danced, there would be an undercurrent in the air that would follow the long sword's movements. Although many of the fallen petals under the peach trees did not follow the movements of the person's footsteps, they were eager to give it a try as the long sword stretched and retracted. Not long later, the middle-aged man's sword moves were so slow that it was as heavy as 10,000 caddies. The surrounding fallen petals gradually jumped and were unwilling to turn into spring mud. They danced in the air following the changes of the long sword. This was still not considered shocking. After a long time, even more peach blossoms flew down from the peach tree and joined the dance. Moreover, there were more and more of them, and in a moment, the hundreds of peach blossoms condensed into the shape of a person and rapidly danced in the air. Suddenly, the middle-aged man shouted and pointed the long sword in his hand into the lake. The human-shaped peach blossoms flew into the lake. Before the peach blossoms could get close, a loud sound came from the lake. A huge wave of several feet high was created by the long sword and the peach blossoms were directly smashed into the lake. When the lake was covered by the falling petals, the middle-aged man slowly withdrew his long sword and smiled as he muttered to himself. The sword light is restrained and returned to its original state. As the saying goes, the shapeless sword she can harm people without them noticing. I have practiced for many years. I did not expect that I would succeed in this disheartened and lazy state. Sigh. The middle-aged man's forehead was full and the ground was round. He had a graceful appearance. Wasn't he the eldest disciple of Rui Jin Palace, Shimujuan? The falling flowers are yearning for love, but the heartless flowing water is heartless. Looking at the countless peach blossoms floating in the lake, Shimu Jun could not help but feel sad. A trace of hatred appeared in his eyes as he shook his long sword. His figure rose from the ground and swiftly rushed down the mountain like a horse. As for the dozen or so disciples of the Ruijin Palace, when they saw Zhang Xiaohua heading towards a fork in the road, they also turned around and patted their horses to head in another direction. After a short time, one of the disciples looked back and saw that they were far away from the fork in the road and whispered, "Junior brother Yang, this Ren Xiaoyao, how can he be so bold? First, he offended Fiery Palace's Zhang Pinger, infuriating Senior Marshal Brother Yu to the point that he wanted to go down the mountain and kill that bastard. Then, he hooked up with Senior Marshal Sister Xia of Mo Xian Palace and drove Senior Marshal Brother Shi away. It's already been more than a month and there's still no trace of him." Junior brother Yang smiled and said, "This is where he's smart, stepping on people one by one. However, we're stepping on our own Senior Marshal brothers, while he's stepping on our Senior Marshal sisters. TSK, I also want to step on them, but there's no Junior Marshal sister for me to step on. By the way, Junior brother Yang, didn't Senior Marshal brother Yu say that he wanted to go down the mountain to kill that bastard? Why did he disappear? Tell me, did Senior Marshal brother Yu go or not? Aren't you talking nonsense? If Senior Marshal brother Yu went, how could that bastard survive? How could there be a story of him charging into the remnant fragrance with a sword? Wouldn't Senior Marshal Sister Xia and Senior Marshal Brother Shi be on the same level? However, Senior Marshal Brother Yu went out in a huff and then disappeared without a trace. Could it be what? A voice came from the side. The disciple was startled. When he looked up, he revealed an awkward smile and bowed. Senior Marshal Brother Shi, you're back. And I'm back. What did you just say? Say it again. The disciple hesitated. I said that Senior Marshal Brother Yu went out in a huff after talking to Junior Marshal Brother Yang and then disappeared without a trace. Maybe Ren Xiaoyao did something evil to him. That might not be the case. The disciple gritted his teeth and finished his sentence. Third Marshal Brother Yu hasn't returned yet? Shimujuan asked curiously. Then he said, and you're right. It makes a lot of sense. However, why didn't you say anything when I asked you earlier? The disciple said innocently. Senior Marshal Brother Shi, this is just nonsense from me. Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are far inferior to Senior Marshal Brother Yu's. How could he do something evil to Senior Marshal Brother Yu? That might not be the case. Ren Xiaoyao is extremely strong. If Third Marshal Brother Yu didn't notice. Shimujuan said with a smile without looking away. Yes, Senior Marshal Brother Shi is right. With Ren Xiaoyao's strength, even Senior Marshal Brother Hu would be defeated. It's hard to say if Senior Marshal Brother Yu was careless. The disciple smiled apologetically. All right, remember this. When I look for you in the future, don't forget that there's still you. Yes, Senior Marshal Brother Shi. I understand. Junior Marshal Brother Yang nodded. All right, go ahead. Look for me when you're back. Shimujuan stood up and was about to leave. However, he thought of something and asked, Why did you suddenly think of Ren Xiaoyao? The disciple pointed at the fork in the distance. Senior Marshal Brother Shi, we bumped into Ren Xiaoyao at the fork in the road. From what he said, he actually received an order from Lord Hierarch to go to the ruins of purification. But he took a wrong turn and went that way. Shimujuan nodded. Yes, I understand. Lord Hierarch's orders must be important. That slow-witted fellow actually lost his way. Sigh, it's obvious that he's not a diligent person. Forget it. Since Lord Hierarch thinks highly of him, what does it have to do with us? You guys go ahead. I'm about to return to Ruijin Hall. Oh right, is everything alright in the hall? It's nothing. Senior Marshal Brother Shi, you should head back first. Lord Hierarch has been nagging about it for a long time. Alright, I'll head back now. Go ahead. After Shimujuan finished speaking, he executed his movement technique and headed toward the fork in the road. When he reached the fork in the road, he opened his eyes and ears. When he saw that there was no one around, he bent down and headed in the direction of Zhang Xiaohua. Just as Shi Mujuan was heading toward Zhang Xiaohua's fork in the road, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Her left hand formed a seal, and it was the technique of the hand of karma from the heavenly Tao. However, the technique was extremely profound. During the month when Zhang Xiaohua was recuperating a lingering fragrance peak, she had been trying to comprehend it. However, she was still unable to comprehend it. She didn't even gain the slightest bit from it. She could only use her left hand to form the technique. Zhang Xiaohua wasn't surprised when she saw that the technique on her left hand was ineffective. The Tao of Karma was so profound that the technique derived from it was naturally of a high level. In Zhang Xiaohua's opinion, even the technique of the innate divine restriction couldn't be compared to it. How could she possibly comprehend it in just a month? However, Zhang Xiaohua also knew that although her hand of karma couldn't calculate the reason, since her heart was moved, something unfavorable must have happened to her. The most important thing was to take precautions first. Speaking of precautions, Zhang Xiaohua unconsciously took out the small shield in her arms. Other than the jade piece, Zhang Xiaohua's defense was also the robe left behind by Elder Hua. Speaking of the robe, Zhang Xiaohua was also depressed. It wasn't right to say that the robe was useless. During this expedition, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to use the Immortal Tao technique. Along the way, she was attacked by the disciples of Rui Jin Palace. She didn't know how many long swords had pierced her body. If it weren't for the robe, she would have been injured long ago. However, this robe was still on her body, and she didn't know how to activate it. Along the way, although the sword tips were blocked, a lot of the force was transmitted to her body. Zhang Xiaohua's serious injuries were mostly due to this robe. Presumably, this kind of defensive celestial tool could only resist the attack of genuine qi. It was useless against pure force attacks. Of course, the most important thing was that this robe was close-fitting. If the defense was ineffective, it would directly hit Zhang Xiaohua's body. She would be the one suffering the pain. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua still hoped to refine this small shield so that she could use it in the future. In front of Embark Palace, Zhang Xiaohua had witnessed Nun Jingyi's powerful divine sense. Although he didn't know what level of qi refining or foundation establishment Nun Jingyi was, just her divine sense alone was more powerful than Zhang Xiaohua's. How would he dare to show any signs of being an Immortal Tao practitioner in Embark Palace? Only after leaving Lingering Fragrance Peak did he dare to have any ideas about this small shield. Huan's legs were strong. By the time the sky turned dark, they had already traveled a long distance and arrived at a mountain forest. Zhang Xiaohua occasionally looked back with his divine sense and attention. He looked left and right, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. On the mountain path, they met a few outer disciples. When they saw Zhang Xiaohua's clothes, they knew that he was an inner disciple. They were all very respectful and didn't dare to be negligent. How could it be as unexpected as Zhang Xiaohua thought? After entering the mountain forest, Zhang Xiaohua jumped down from Huan's back. He patted Huan's protruding horn and took the great wisdom sword with him. When he came out, he was in a valley. Looking around, Zhang Xiaohua didn't find a good place to hide. He sat down cross-legged and released his divine sense. He threw the small shield in his hand, and it floated in the air. The restriction in the small shield was still there. As long as his divine sense tried to force its way in, it would immediately be ejected. He closed his eyes and pondered for a while. Zhang Xiaohua formed a spell with his hands and used a few common sacrificial spells from the Refining the World to see if it would be useful. Unfortunately, when the spells entered, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There wasn't any sound. The small shield was still floating in the air, and only a vague outline could be seen. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Just as he was about to put the small shield back into his money pouch, his heart suddenly stirred. Another extremely familiar hand seal appeared in his left and right hands. Once the true qi was absorbed, Zhang Xiaohua waved his right hand and hit the small shield. Suddenly, the small shield moved slightly and even emitted an extremely faint fiery red brilliance. Eh? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. He thought to himself, "This, the sacrificial spell of the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. How can it be used to refine this small shield?" It turned out that the spell Zhang Xiaohua used was the sacrificial spell he learned from the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace. Could it be that this small shield was also refined by an expert of the incense cult, just like the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace? Zhang Xiaohua guessed. -4. Chapter 891. However, such guesses were meaningless. Zhang Xiaohua only needed to refine the small shield. The way of immortals had been destroyed for tens of thousands of years. Even if she knew who had refined it, would she return it to its rightful owner? However, refining the shield was not as easy as Zhang Xiaohua had imagined. It seemed that only the first few incantations had some effect. Later on, they were not very effective. The faint red light emitted by the shield had also disappeared. Zhang Xiaohua had wanted to stop, but she was unwilling to give up. Hence, she came up with the idea of treating a hopeless situation as a last resort. The vital energy in her left and right meridians could support the entire set of incantations without a problem. Even the incantations for refining the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace were all applied to the shield. This method was somewhat effective. Occasionally, some of the incantations were applied, and the small shield had some reaction. The faint brilliance gradually increased, and when the last incantation was applied, the shield's brilliance flickered and then disappeared. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense, which was covering the shield, immediately sensed a small crack in the restriction. Using her divine sense to scan the inside, Zhang Xiaohua was pleasantly surprised. She saw that the method of refining the shield had been transmitted to her mind. When Zhang Xiaohua finished reading the method of refining the shield, she could not help but feel discouraged. This small shield had a nice name: Crimson Spirit Protection, and its effects were extremely powerful. However, refining it was not an easy task. The Crimson Spirit Protection was divided into different stages, and the incantations for each stage were different. Even the vital energy required for each incantation was not something Zhang Xiaohua could achieve at the moment. What Zhang Xiaohua could do now was to activate the most basic and most primitive defensive function. Well, to put it bluntly, she could only use the Crimson Spirit Protection to block attacks. After pondering for a long time, Zhang Xiaohua decided to put away the Crimson Spirit Shield. They were currently in the wilderness, and although they were in a valley, the light emitted by the Crimson Spirit Shield would spread far and wide. It would not be a good thing if it attracted the attention of the disciples of the School of Fragrance. Zhang Xiaohua placed a jade talisman around her and set up a restriction. Then, she sat down cross-legged and began cultivating the Carefree Heart Sutra. The night passed silently. The next day, Zhang Xiaohua woke up. The uneasiness in her heart grew stronger. However, she jumped onto a tree and looked carefully. She didn't find anything unusual. Could it be that there is great danger ahead? Zhang Xiaohua muttered to herself. As a result, Zhang Xiaohua didn't rush the itinerary for the day. She just let the horse reins and let the 4 odd beasts Huan move forward at a leisurely pace. A few more days passed and nothing unusual happened. Zhang Xiaohua was the only one who was alert and secretly kept an eye on things. One day, they arrived at a hill. She saw that there were some swamps on the left side of the hill. The leaves were rotten and the mud was rotten. It was a place where few people went. Looking up at the sky, it was noon. Zhang Xiaohua muttered to herself. I've mastered the Crimson Spirit Protection formula these days. I've also accumulated enough Jinqi. If I'm not wrong, I should be able to use the simplest method to refine it. It's noon now and the sun is shining brightly. The fiery red light of the Crimson Spirit Protection formula shouldn't attract attention. Since the sun is shining, it should be very bright. Presumably, she would leave Huan at the side of the hill where there were many trees. She would ride the wind and head towards the depths of the swamps. There was a lot of mud in the depths of the swamps, and there was also a rotten smell. It was something rarely seen in the fragrance cult. Zhang Xiaohua looked around and found a dry spot. She landed and found a place with abundant sunlight. She sat down cross-legged and calmed her mind. She took out the Crimson Spirit Protection formula from her bosom. The small shield was incomparably exquisite. The fine pattern seemed to be flowing. Zhang Xiaohua lovingly caressed it, and then threw the Crimson Spirit Protection formula into the air. The Crimson Spirit Protection formula that she had practiced countless times in her mind was executed by Zhang Xiaohua. She methodically hit the Crimson Spirit Protection formula. The Crimson Spirit Protection formula emitted a faint brilliance which became increasingly dazzling. In the end, it turned into a ball of scarlet-red light. The shield's original appearance was long gone. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the Crimson Spirit Protection formula in front of her, and her heart was already blooming with joy. It was just the most basic refinement, and it already looked so good. Was there a need to doubt it? It was definitely a good item. Zhang Xiaohua took a deep breath and drew out the last strand of true qi from her body. The last seal in her left hand was already formed. With a wave of her left hand, a clang sound was heard and the seal hit the brilliance. The brilliance was like the rising sun. Zhang Xiaohua slightly narrowed her eyes. Needless to say, Zhang Xiaohua did not spit out the natal true qi after the seal. However, it was no longer a problem. After the brilliant brilliance, the Crimson Spirit Protection formula returned to its original appearance. It was a small shield floating in the air. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua felt that she could control the Crimson Spirit Protection formula. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua was about to use the strand of true qi in her body to strike the Crimson Spirit Protection formula. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat and a strong sense of danger emerged from her left side. Oh no, is there a ferocious beast? Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. She immediately kept the Crimson Spirit Protection formula and took out the chasing dream sword. Her left hand took out a piece of primordial stone. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua's true qi in her meridians was exhausted and she was unable to use the earth escape technique. She could only use the ethereal steps and quickly leaped onto a large tree with luxuriant foliage. She carefully looked to her left side. It was noon and the sun was shining brightly. From time to time, there would be the chirping of cicadas and the chirping of birds. Even the mountain wind was blowing the leaves, making a rustling sound. Where Zhang Xiaohua looked, the leaves were undulating and the chirping of birds was still the same. It was not different from the surroundings. Zhang Xiaohua stared for a long time but did not see any abnormalities. She could not help but wonder. Could it be that I am being paranoid? If this happens often, won't I end up with a nervous breakdown? Suddenly, a voice came from not far away. Ren Xiaoyao Yu. Are you looking for me? Io, Zhang Xiaohua cried out in surprise and almost fell from the tree. Which senior expert is this? He can actually hide from my divine sense and eyes? When Zhang Xiaohua steadied herself and focused her gaze, Shimujuan was standing on a large tree a few feet away. He was dressed in embroidered robes and casually holding a long sword. He was standing on a tall branch and his figure was moving up and down along with the branches, undulating up and down. Shimujuan! Zhang Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air, his eyes narrowing. Why is this fellow here? No wonder I have been feeling uneasy these past few days. It seems like this fellow has been stalking me for a few days. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua was already aware that he was in the martial world. Even though he did not have such a strong feeling before, he was not naive enough to think that Shimujuan was only here for the winding path to seclusion. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua put on a smile and jumped down from the tree. She looked rather clumsy as she cupped her fists and said, Senior Brother Shi, oh right, Senior Brother Shi, may I call you Senior Brother Shi from now on? Humph. Shimujuan scoffed coldly and said coldly, Mud will never be able to support a wall. I have already said that you are not fit to call me Senior Brother Shi. That was the case in the past, and it is still the case now. What about in the future? Of course it is. Zhang Xiaohua's expression was slightly awkward and nervous. The small sword in her hand moved unconsciously and she smiled. Since she, That does not allow me to call you that, then how should I address you? Once she finished speaking, she smiled as if she was trying to curry favor. Since I've been staying at Lingering Fragrance Peak for so long, there will be a time when we will meet again. Shimujuin looked at her with interest and laughed coldly. Perhaps we won't have the chance to meet again in the future. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and looked perplexed. She raised her head and looked behind Shimujuin. She raised her voice and said, My dear friend, I heard some strange movements over there just now. It doesn't seem to be the work of humans. I wonder if Brother Rin saw it? Shimujuin did not even turn his head. He stared at Zhang Xiaohua's surroundings and smiled. There's no need to look. This is just a smelly swamp. Even the immortal birds of the fragrant fragrance cult won't come here. How could there be any movements? Oh, I see. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, Then I can rest assured. This place is remote and wild beasts should come here often. If I'm not careful, won't I be attacked by a ferocious beast? You should look around more. Don't get killed by a fly that flies over. Shimujuin mocked. Is that so? Zhang Xiaohua looked around in surprise and asked, By the way, my dear friend, it has been more than a month since I last saw you at Emotian Palace. May I know where you have gone? Why did you suddenly appear here? Shut up. Shimujuin was annoyed when he heard her and said, Who are you to call my dear friend? This? Zhang Xiaohua shrugged her shoulders in fright and said anxiously, Then how should I address you? You should at least address me as such. In this case, why don't you address me as the great disciple of Rei Jin Hall? Shimujuin stood up and directly used his qigong to fly 20 feet away. However, he stopped. His body continued to move up and down along with the branches as he stood steadily. The smile on his face was already clear. However, there was a trace of joy in this smile. It was not the joy of being in a good mood, but the joy of seeing a plaything. Zhang Xiaohua subconsciously took 2 steps back when she saw Shimujuin approaching. She smiled charmingly and said, Great disciple of Rei Jin Hall, may I know how you got here? Don't tell me you are also heading to Ruins Huan under the orders of the cult master? Ruins Huan? Shimujuin laughed out loud. You want to go to Ruins Huan with your skills? Wait until you are alive. Then, he snorted coldly. Don't use the cult master to remind me. There are many things that the cult master does not know about in Fragrance Cult. Even if I kill you on the spot, who will know that I am the one who did it? Moreover, the ruins of Huan is the forbidden area of the Fragrant Cult. For thousands of years, countless disciples have never come out of the ruins of Huan. Even if you don't come out of the ruins of Huan, do you think the cult master will look for you? Zhang Xiaohua turned pale with fright and waved her hands. Ren, great disciple of Rei Jin Hall, the cult master only asked me to go to the outskirts of Ruins Huan to receive the disciples who are heading there. He did not say that I must go in. -4. Chapter 892. Ha! Shimujuin laughed heartily, as if he had never been this happy before. The tree branch beneath him moved up and down even more frequently. Shimujuin's fingers were trembling as he laughed. He pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and said, Talent! Talent! Only now do I know that junior brother Rin is a talent. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. This? Didn't you not allow me to call you senior brother? Why are you still calling me junior brother? Shimujuin held back his laughter with great difficulty and said, I already knew that you were a scheming person from the start. I really don't feel ashamed to be associated with you. Now, it seems that not only are you scheming, even your thick skin is admirable. Therefore, I unconsciously wanted to call you junior brother. However, this is because I think highly of you. If you want to call me senior brother, then it's still not enough. Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This? What kind of situation is this? Could it be that this is the legendary saying, only officials are allowed to set fires, but commoners are not allowed to light lamps? Zhang Xiaohua's innocent face made Shimujuin laugh heartily again. Zhang Xiaohua also looked on with a smile and did not move. And Xiaoyao, Rin Xiaoyao, you're really good at playing the fool. Oh, did you use this glib tongue of yours to trick junior sister Zi Xia into joining you? The corners of Zhang Xihua's mouth curled into a slight smile when Meng was mentioned. He cupped his hands toward Shimujuan and said, Speaking of which, I would like to thank you for thinking highly of Meng. There are not many disciples on Lingering Fragrance Peak who have the same judgment as you and I. Shimujuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. He leaned the long sword in his left hand against his back and looked around. Junior brother Ren, don't you think that your appearance in the Fragrant Cult and Lingering Fragrance Peak is very inappropriate? Then, without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to reply, he continued. If it wasn't for your appearance, Zi Xia would have already accepted my token. Not long after, she would have become the lover of the first disciple of Rui Jinhao. Although Rui Jinhao's status is lower than Mo Xiangong's, she has received my protection. When I become the Hall Master in the future, her happiness will be just around the corner. Even if Peacock obtained the inheritance of the incense religion, how could she compare to her? In the future you'll just be an old grandaunt, and you'll never know the feeling of love. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. He pointed at Shimujuan and said, You're insinuating Lord Cult Master. So what if I say it directly? Shimujuan laughed sinisterly. Do you think you still have the chance to complain to Lord Cult Leader? Even if you go back and complain, do you think Lord Cult Master will believe you? Or will he believe me? Brother, do you think I have nowhere to run? Zhang Xiaohua chuckled coldly at this moment. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's sudden change in attitude, Shimujuan was stunned and said, What? Have you thought of a good way to escape? Then, he looked left and right. I already know your Qigong. I'm not afraid of making you feel inferior. Even if I give you an hour's head start, it's enough for me to catch up to you within 6 hours. So, your delusion of delaying time and looking for a way out is completely useless. Then, he drew his sword from his back and drew a few strokes in front of his eyes, saying, Actually, I originally planned to wait for you to return to Lingering Fragrance Peak before killing you openly. However, I really couldn't hold back this anger in my heart, and wanted to put you to death by my sword sooner. That's why I followed you here. Sigh, I still don't have enough self-cultivation. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised and couldn't help but ask. Brother, Lord Cult Master has ordered you not to make things difficult for me. Why do you want to kill me openly? Ha! Shimujuan looked at Zhang Xiaohua in amusement. I have many ways to kill you. However, since I blocked you here, there's no harm in telling you. My third junior brother has been out for a long time and he hasn't returned. I heard from the disciples of Rui Jinhao that when he left, he said that he was going to find trouble with you. Since he didn't do so, he naturally died in your hands. I'm avenging my junior brother and investigating the real culprit. Since you didn't cooperate and stubbornly resisted, it's reasonable for me to kill you. Even if third junior brother comes back in the future, I'll just offer my humble apology and be willing to be punished. What can I do? Clap, clap, clap. Zhang Xiaohua applauded and said, Brother, you have a good plan. Using senior brother Yu's departure as an excuse to kill me, even if the cult master punishes me, it'll still be because of my relationship with Zhang Pinger. You can also defend yourself. How wonderful, how wonderful. Sigh Yu Laosan, since he said that he was going to find trouble with you, why didn't he go and find trouble with you? If I had killed you earlier, all these things wouldn't have happened. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. The third rule of Rui Xiang cult forbids fratricidal fighting. How did senior brother you dare to do it? The ancients said that a doctor can't be punished. Haven't you heard of it? With my master, Abbess Jinggang, as a backer, what can't be covered up? I understand. Brother, you have the same plan at this moment. How could that be? Junior brother Ren thinks too highly of himself. I only need to kill you. How could I let anyone know? Not to mention letting the cult master know. Tisk tsk. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and saluted. Thank you for teaching me, brother. Oh, that's right. Brother, you've talked for a long time. Is your mouth dry? Yes, if it was me, I would definitely kill you from the start. Why would I dawdle for so long? Ha! Shimujuin laughed again and leaped down from the tree, saying, I've already said it. Junior brother Ren, don't think too highly of yourself. Even if your junior sister Zi Xiao's lover, even if you broke into Lingering Fragrance Peak alone, even if Hu Ben, Ming Qing, and junior brother Su were all defeated by you, but in my eyes, you're just an ant. If I want to kill you, I only need one strike. Do you understand? Just one strike. Thinking back to that day, if it wasn't for the cult master stopping me, I would definitely have stabbed you with my sword. Sai, how would you know all this? Only when our strengths are swapped can you understand how I feel at this moment. I almost want to crush your bones and scatter your ashes, but I just can't forget the humiliation you gave me at Mo Xian Palace. If I don't vent this anger, it'll be detrimental to my future cultivation. Who knows, it might even become my inner demon. Sai, what's the use of telling you all this? Could it be that my inner demon has become stronger because my martial arts have improved? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and nodded. Yes, I can understand Brother Ren's feelings. If that bastard Zhong Pei was here, I might have to dawdle with him for a long time before making my move. Zhong Pei? What does he have to do with you? Shimujuan was stunned. Because I'm the same as you. I want to kill him. Zhang Xiaohua enunciated each word clearly. Ha! Shimujuan laughed so hard that he bent over. It's really, really funny. With that little bit of strength of yours, you can only fight with Hu Ben. Others have countless ways to kill you. Oh, right, where's that sword embryo of yours? Why did it land on the David's deer? It's a pity. As Shimujuan spoke, the long sword in his hand was the same as before. He waved it lightly, but suddenly, he exerted force in his hand and threw the long sword out. Zhang Xiaohua was about 20 feet away from Shimujuan. She could not reach him with her divine sense, but she had already released it to protect her body. When she saw Shimujuan attack without any warning and the way he attacked was exactly the same as a flying sword, she could not help but break out in cold sweat. She held Shimujuan's nose and said so much because she wanted to absorb more vitality from the vitality stone so that she could deal with Shimujuan using the way of the Immortals. However, how could she not be shocked when she saw that Shimujuan was also an expert in the way of the Immortals? Fortunately, Shimujuan threw the long sword at Zhang Xiaohua like a waterfall. Then, Shimujuan stood up and used his lightness skill to chase after her. Just as he said, he was much faster than Zhang Xiaohua's ethereal steps. He caught up with the sword in a few leaps and grabbed the hilt of the long sword before thrusting it at Zhang Xiaohua. My God! What kind of technique is this? When she saw Shimujuan's technique clearly, Zhang Xiaohua wiped the cold sweat off her forehead. As long as it was not a flying sword from the way of the Immortals, she had nothing to be afraid of. However, even though Shimujuan did not use his flying sword, his sword was extremely powerful. It was similar to the sword that Zhang Xiaohua had used in front of Mo Xiangong. She felt as though she was being enveloped by a huge cage. No matter how she tried to dodge, the long sword would pierce her head. Zhang Xiaohua exclaimed loudly. She took out Xu Ming from her bosom and leaped forward to collide with the tip of Shimujuan's sword. Since there was no place to dodge, perhaps she would have a chance of survival if she met the attack head-on. As expected, Shimujuan was slightly taken aback when he saw Zhang Xiaohua taking out a small sword. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua charging towards the tip of his sword, he was even more surprised. His technique, Feng Lai, emphasized on striking first to gain the upper hand. If it was purely for defense, he would be at a disadvantage. This technique was the same one that Shimujuan had used to stab Zhang Xiaohua in front of Mo Xiangong. However, it was more powerful and his inner energy was more restrained. The murderous intent in it was also more intense. Seeing that she was about to collide with the long sword, Zhang Xiaohua thrust out the small sword in her hand. She used her divine sense to find the tip of the long sword and tapped it. However, just as she was about to touch the long sword, the tip of the long sword trembled and became blurry in her divine sense. The short sword was unable to touch it. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Without hesitation, she swung her right arm and the short sword sliced towards the long sword, hoping to touch the long sword. However, even though it was such a short distance, Shi Mujuan's long sword still sank 2 inches and dodged Zhang Xiaohua's small sword. The tip of the long sword strangely jumped upwards and pierced towards Zhang Xiaohua's armpit. Too powerful! Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but praise. This swordsmanship was indeed beyond the imagination of someone like Zhang Xiaohua, who had only been in contact with martial arts for 4 to 5 years. After being forced into a corner by Shi Mujuan, Zhang Xiaohua could only float and use the levitation technique. She forcefully moved her body 2 inches to the side and used the small sword in her right hand to block the long sword. With a loud clang, the 2 swords collided. Shi Mujuan knew that Zhang Xiaohua's strength was shocking and didn't plan to compete with her. He borrowed the force of the long sword and floated back. He stood on the grass and frowned. What? What kind of qigong is this? -4. Chapter 893. Shi Mujuan had already used this move in front of Mo Xiangong. In his mind, Zhang Xiaohua had no chance of dodging it. At that time, Zhang Xiaohua did not even have the time to react. However, he was shocked to see that Zhang Xiaohua was able to identify the weakness of his sword move with just one look. Furthermore, she had used a lightness technique that he did not know of to move her body 2 inches in the air. When she heard Shi Mujuan's surprised question, Zhang Xiaohua chuckled and said, "I am not like Brother Ren. I have never been interested in teaching others. Even if I were to kill someone, I would not give him a chance to refute. Forgive me for not answering your question." Shi Mujuan was furious when he saw Zhang Xiaohua mocking him. However, he immediately sneered. "So what if I tell you 10,000 times? You want to anger me? You have no chance." As he spoke, he slowly walked towards Zhang Xiaohua and slowly extended his long sword. He seemed to be chatting casually with a good friend. However, the long sword had already condensed inner energy, causing the surrounding air to flow. A faint breeze blew towards Zhang Xiaohua. Although Zhang Xiaohua couldn't see it with his eyes, he could sense it with his divine sense. Unknowingly, his expression changed drastically. He had never seen such a sword technique before. Even the bronze elder in the underground hall didn't have such a profound sword technique. Seeing the inner force brewing and the sword stabbing out, even some divine abilities of the Immortal Tao couldn't compare. Hence, Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. Without hesitation, she tossed the small sword and formed a seal with her hands. She controlled Chasing Dream, and from top to bottom, it pierced towards Shi Mujuan's face like a bolt of lightning. A flying sword? Shi Mujuan was shocked and his expression changed drastically. He no longer had the leisure from before. He no longer cared about stabbing Zhang Xiaohua with his sword. Instead, he raised his sword and pointed it towards Chasing Dream like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. She activated her Dharma spell again and her consciousness drove Chasing Dream. It leaped continuously like a dancing snake, stabbing at Shi Mujuan from different angles. However, Shi Mujuan's martial arts were clearly superior to the bronze-masked old man. Perhaps it could be said that his experience in dealing with flying swords was far greater than the latter's. His figure did not change as he stood steadily. Although his face was green and red, his wrist was extremely steady. The long sword in his hand was like a magnet. As long as Zhang Xiaohua's Chasing Dream arrived, the long sword would immediately point out. It was precisely the tip of the small sword. Every time it collided, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense would be shaken. It was as if this was the incense cult's unique method of dealing with flying swords. Seeing that her attack was ineffective, Zhang Xiaohua made a hand seal and the small sword stopped in midair. She rubbed her chin and acted as if she was thinking. Seeing that he was free, Shi Mujuan stopped and raised his long sword slightly. He mocked himself. "I didn't expect Junior Brother Ren to be a cultivator of the Immortal Tao. Sai, you've really hidden yourself well. Even I have been fooled by you. Not only that, even the sect leader has been fooled by you. What am I? However, with junior brother Ren's methods, how could he be a nobody? Could he be a junior brother of the Tenrya sect? Zhang Xiaohua scratched her chin and said disdainfully, I've already told you that I won't answer your questions. Don't waste your time. Is that so? Shimujuan looked at the small sword in the air and said, Then I won't ask any more. I hope you can still be so stubborn in front of the sect leader. What? You don't intend to kill me? Zhang Xiaohua mocked. Kill? Why would I want to kill you? You're obviously a disciple of the Tenrya sect and have come to Lingxiang Peak for another mission. Deceiving junior sister Zhixiao's feelings is also for the sake of the Tenrya sect. I only need to capture you and send you to Mo Xian Palace. Do you think junior sister Zhixia will still believe you? Sai, it's a good plan. Zhang Xiaohua praised. But can you capture me? Why not? Shimujuan said proudly. Although you're a cultivator of the immortal Tao, you're still young and your flying sword technique is rusty. You haven't received the true teachings of the immortal Tao. You're a far cry from my master, not to mention the sect leader. Abbess Jinggang? Zhang Xiaohua was taken aback for a moment before realizing that Nun Jinggang was probably the same as Nun Jingyi. Both of them had received the inheritance. It was just that Nun Jingyi was one step ahead of them, just like Peacock and Qingqin. Moreover, with the changes in the world's vitality, only my Xianxian sect is blessed by the heavens to have the palace of inheritance to pass down the teachings of the immortal Tao. I'm afraid you're not a disciple of the Tenrya sect. The disciples of the immortal Tao trained by them wouldn't be able to barge into my Xianxian sect's tiger's den like you. Their techniques wouldn't be as rusty as yours. At this point, greed appeared in his eyes again and he smiled. You're really a delicious cake sent to my door. TSK, if I send you to the sect leader, I'll also get the chance to enter the palace of inheritance? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but ask. That's strange, why don't you ask me? You even want to send me to the sect leader? Your immortal Tao is so complicated, how can I force the information out of your hands? Why don't I hand you over to the sect leader? Firstly, your knowledge can supplement my Xianxiang sect's teachings. Secondly, I can force you to reveal the secrets of the immortal Tao. Thirdly, with such great merit, why can't the sect leader let me enter the palace of inheritance? I can't wait. As he spoke, Shimujuan walked towards Zhang Xiaohua with his sword. Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly and activated the small sword again to stab at Shimujuan. However, Shimujuan blocked the flying sword and didn't stop at all, as if the flying sword was just a fly flying around randomly. Wow, that's too fierce. This was the first time Zhang Xiaohua met someone who treated a flying sword as an ordinary object. She stabbed it a few more times but it didn't work. She formed a hand seal and retracted the sword. She took out a jade talisman and threw it at Shimujuan. When he saw the light red jade talisman flying towards him, he seemed to have expected it. He handed the sword to his left hand and took out a light green jade talisman. He exerted some force and a defensive light barrier enveloped him. Zhang Xiaohua's fire talisman flew over and made a crisp sound. A flame burned on the green light barrier. However, unlike Yu Zhuochuan's light barrier, the green light barrier only flashed slightly and didn't fade much. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and took out a few more talismans. She didn't give up and threw them at the light barrier one by one. The light barrier finally dimmed a little. Suddenly, Shimujuan's expression changed as if he thought of something. He raised his head and shouted angrily. Ren Xiaoyao, did my Yu Laosan die in your hands? Zhang Xiaohua shrugged her shoulders and said helplessly. Brother Ren, I already told you that I won't answer any of your questions. How could you forget? Even if you didn't say it, I would have guessed it. Yu Laosan usually runs away for a few days. He hasn't returned for more than a month. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? He must have wanted to settle the score with you. He didn't expect to be killed by you. This fire talisman is a good item to destroy a corpse. Zhang Xiaohua continued to shake her head. I won't say, I won't deny, and I won't agree. All right, then I shall capture you first. Shimujuin raised his sword and stepped forward. Zhang Xiaohua didn't exchange blows with him directly. She continued to throw out the fire talismans. When she saw the faint green light barrier gradually extinguishing, Zhang Xiaohua was secretly delighted. Shimujuin's expression changed as well. He didn't expect Zhang Xiaohua to have so many fire talismans. Finally, a fire talisman was thrown out and extinguished the faint green light barrier. Shimujuin kept his sword and prepared to use his qinggong to evade. However, Zhang Xiaohua reached into her clothes with a strange expression on her face. Sigh, needless to say, even though Zhang Xiaohua had many fire talismans, she had already used some on Shimujuin. This time, Shimujuin's light barrier was even stronger. Zhang Xiaohua's last talisman had destroyed Shimujuin's light barrier. Zhang Xiaohua didn't have any more talismans to take out. When he saw that Zhang Xiaohua still hadn't taken her hands out of her clothes, Shimujuin laughed loudly. I knew you wouldn't have too many talismans. After he finished speaking, he thrust his sword forward again. Zhang Xiaohua leapt into the air and dodged. However, the long sword didn't let her off and chased after her closely. Helpless, Zhang Xiaohua reached out and took out the dragon binding hoop. She raised her hand and threw it at Shimujuin. There's more? Shimujuin was even more shocked. Seeing that the dragon binding hoop had enlarged and was about to wrap around his body, he already knew how powerful it was. He stabbed his long sword into the ground and quickly took out something from his chest. It was a purple golden hairpin. It was the purple phoenix hairpin that he had given to Meng that day. Then, he took out a primordial stone the size of a fist with his other hand and chanted something. Following which, he slashed the dragon binding hoop with the purple phoenix hairpin. A bolt of lightning shot out and hit the dragon binding hoop with a paw, causing the dragon binding hoop to tumble. This is bad. When Zhang Xiaohua saw the golden hairpin that Shimujuin took out, she felt that it looked familiar. Then she knew that things weren't going well. As expected, the golden hairpin was so powerful that even Shimujuin, who wasn't in the Immortal Tao, could control it. However, the dragon binding hoop couldn't be used. However, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't back down now. She could only take out a vital stone from her clothes and replenish her vital energy while controlling the dragon binding hoop. Shimujuin was busy slacking off. When he saw the vital stone in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, his eyes couldn't help but reveal a greedy look. Vital stones were rare even in the incense cult. As the eldest disciple of the Rui Jin Hall, he only had one. Since he could snatch one from Zhang Xiaohua, it was normal that he had more. Hence, Shimujuin perked up even more and carefully controlled the purple phoenix hairpin. Bolts of lightning struck the dragon binding hoop, knocking it off again and again. Zhang Xiaohua was also pitiful. All his previous battles were using Immortal Tao artifacts to bully martial artists. When had he ever encountered such a true Immortal Tao battle technique? Shimujuin was using vital stones to control the purple phoenix hairpin. This was the secret technique of the incense cult. It didn't deplete his vital energy. Yes, he didn't have much vital energy to begin with. As for Shimujuin, he was truly using up his vital energy. Although he had vital stones to replenish it, it couldn't keep up with the depletion of the dragon binding hoop. Soon, the vital energy in his meridians was about to dry up. -4. Chapter 894. Seeing that the vital energy in her meridians had been depleted, Zhang Xiaohua formed a seal and quickly retrieved the dragon binding bracelet. Her vital energy was already depleted and even her divine sense was a little weak. If Shimujuin were to use some unfathomable method to capture her treasure, she would be in deep despair. Was there a need to explain the current situation? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't care less about the secrets of the way of the immortals or killing Shimujuin on the spot. Just as she was about to form a seal, she wanted to burrow into the ground. Unfortunately, the seal hadn't been completed and her vital energy couldn't be released. Shimujuin's eyes revealed a murderous glint as he swung the purple phoenix hairpin in his hand towards Zhang Xiaohua. Good girl! Zhang Xiaohua cried out in her heart. She immediately executed the ethereal steps and charged towards the dense forest in front of her. As she charged forward like a headless fly, Zhang Xiaohua secretly admired her luck. Fortunately, I was on good terms with Oping back then and learned the first 3 stages of the ethereal steps. This is a movement technique that doesn't require vital energy to execute. If I put all my eggs into the basket of vital energy, sigh, I won't be able to escape today. Just as she thought of this, she suddenly felt a chill in her heart. She didn't have time to turn around and immediately dodged to the side. With a loud kacha, an extremely thin streak of lightning struck a large tree at the side. That tree was immediately cut in half. This? What kind of weapon is this? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. Why don't I have the luck to pick this up? Another round of chaos ensued. Even though Zhang Xiaohua had the ethereal steps to escape, Shimujuin's Qigong was even more outstanding. He was able to follow behind her effortlessly. If it wasn't for the purple phoenix hairpin, he would have caught up to Zhang Xiaohua long ago. Even though using the purple phoenix hairpin required a lot of effort, it was also Zhang Xiaohua's only nemesis. Shimujuin was very clear that if he switched to a long sword, Zhang Xiaohua might just turn around and trap him with the ring-like object. He wouldn't be able to dodge it even if he wanted to. Zhang Xiaohua was in a dangerous situation, but Shimujuin controlled the purple phoenix hairpin with his wrist. It was completely different from the divine sense used by cultivators of the way of the immortals. Hence, Shimujuin couldn't hit Zhang Xiaohua easily. He only managed to hit Zhang Xiaohua occasionally, and Zhang Xiaohua would be able to dodge. Of course, even so, Zhang Xiaohua was still struck by the purple phoenix hairpin a few times on his sleeves and back. However, Zhang Xiaohua still had Elder Hua's long robe on her. Even though the long robe hadn't been refined by Zhang Xiaohua and couldn't unleash 100% of its defense, it was still able to block 60% of the lightning's power. However, just the remaining 40% was enough for Zhang Xiaohua to suffer. It was as if she had been pierced by a long sword. She felt a piercing pain in her heart. Her internal organs were also aching faintly. What should I do? Zhang Xiaohua realized that running around wasn't of any use. She couldn't help but think to herself, the only thing I can do now is to escape through the earth. As long as I go underground, this guy won't be able to find me. As for him returning to Lingxiang Peak to report to the sect leader, I can't be bothered about that now. However, if I escape through the earth, I need to recover my vital energy first. How can I recover while running? Just as she was thinking, Zhang Xiaohua thought about the crimson spiritual protection that she had just refined. That item had just been refined and there should still be vital energy inside. If she used it now, she might be able to buy herself some time. Hence, Zhang Xiaohua twisted her body and dodged the lightning. She took out the crimson spiritual protection and chanted the incantation in her heart. Her hands secretly formed a seal. As expected, there was a lot of vital energy inside the crimson spiritual protection. Zhang Xiaohua only needed to insert a strand of vital energy into the crimson spiritual protection to control it. Zhang Xiaohua ran forward again and arrived at a dry open space. Zhang Xiaohua tossed the crimson spiritual protection into the air and it hovered above Zhang Xiaohua's head. Zhang Xiaohua sat down cross-legged and formed a seal on the crimson spiritual protection. With a schwa sound, a ring of crimson light poured down from the top of Zhang Xiaohua's head like a waterfall. It protected Zhang Xiaohua's entire body. Shimujuin, who had chased after Zhang Xiaohua, was shocked. When he saw Zhang Xiaohua acting like a stray dog, he thought that Zhang Xiaohua no longer had the strength to fight back. He thought that he could capture Zhang Xiaohua as long as he fought steadily. However, such a strange item had appeared. How could he not be shocked? Shimujuin didn't reply. He swung the purple phoenix hairpin and another bolt of lightning shot out. With a zap sound, it landed on the radiance released by the crimson spiritual protection. However, that bolt of lightning was immediately annihilated. It seemed to have no effect on the radiance. Shimujuin was a little surprised. Even though he didn't seem to be a cultivator of the immortal Tao, This purple phoenix hairpin was a famous magic treasure of the Immortal Tao. It was given to him by the previous sect master to console Abbess Jinggang. Shimujuin had never used it before. He had occasionally used it during the Orchid Evening Refinement, and was invincible. However, a smile appeared on Shimujuin's face after a short while. Although the Crimson spiritual protection was somewhat powerful, it was only a defense after all. As long as he continued to attack, it would definitely be broken. The moment the Crimson spiritual protection was broken would be the moment Zhang Xiaohua would be killed. Zhang Xiaohua was in a difficult position when she saw Shimujuin's continuous attacks. Even though there weren't any ripples when the lightning struck the radiance, it consumed a lot of vital energy. Under Shimujuin's attacks, Zhang Xiaohua would be killed sooner or later. As Zhang Xiaohua racked her brains to come up with a plan to defeat the enemy, she seized the opportunity to absorb vital energy from the vital stone. She wanted to use the Earth Escape technique before the Crimson spiritual protection was broken. Not only Zhang Xiaohua, but even Shimujuin's face turned pale. How was this a martial arts competition? This was simply a competition to see who had more money. The vital stone in Shimujuin's hand was also being drained of vital energy by Shimujuin using the incense sex secret technique. The vital stone was gradually turning white and the vital energy inside was also gradually decreasing. After another moment of confrontation, Zhang Xiaohua's meridians had already accumulated enough vital energy for the Earth Escape technique. Zhang Xiaohua laughed heartily. She didn't even get up. She formed a hand seal and went underground. Before she left, she waved her hand and kept the Crimson spiritual protection. When Shimujuin saw Zhang Xiaohua disappear from her original spot, he was jealous and gritted his teeth. I wonder which Heavenly King's disciple is this fellow from the Tenrya sect. He's already so powerful at such a young age. He has so many weapons and even knows the Earth Escape technique. How powerful will he be when he grows up? If I don't get rid of him now, when will I be able to? When he thought of this, Shimujuin gave up on the idea of capturing her. He spat out another mouthful of blood and it landed on the vital stone in his hand. He exerted more force with the purple phoenix hairpin and pierced it towards the spot where Zhang Xiaohua was just standing. Crack! A bolt of lightning that was even thinner than the previous one, but it was faintly purple in color. It struck the spot where Zhang Xiaohua had disappeared. Zhang Xiaohua was unlucky. The vital energy that she had accumulated was only enough for her to use the Earth Escape technique once. After she went underground, the traces of her vital energy had yet to disappear completely. Shimujuin's bolt of lightning struck the vital energy. The bolt of lightning followed the vital energy into the ground and struck Zhang Xiaohua's thin, light green light shield. Needless to say, Zhang Xiaohua was forced out of the ground with a loud bang. Haha! Before Zhang Xiaohua could stop laughing arrogantly, she awkwardly looked at Shimujuin, who was grinning sinisterly in front of her. Her laughter was like a duck that had its throat cut off. Then, Zhang Xiaohua fumbled around in her clothes. There was no need for the dragon binding ring and the Crimson spiritual protection. She had no vital energy to activate them. As for the small sword, she couldn't even break his long sword. It was better not to take it out and embarrass herself. In an instant, Zhang Xiaohua felt that she had run out of tricks. Unknowingly, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and a golden hairpin that looked exactly the same as the one in Shimujuin's hand appeared. Eh? The purple phoenix hairpin! Shimujuin had been watching carefully the entire time. He saw the golden hairpin at a glance, and his eyes widened in anger. He shouted, Ren Xiaoyao, you really did it! You Lao Sen really died in your hands! Io! Zhang Xiaohua immediately kept it, and cried out. I took it out wrong, it was a mistake, a mistake! Then, the small mirror appeared in her hand. When Shimujuin saw the other purple phoenix hairpin, he knew that Yuzhuichuan had died in Zhang Xiaohua's hands. His heart was filled with hatred. He waved the purple phoenix hairpin in his hand and attacked again. Zhang Xiaohua was about to keep the small mirror in her hand when she saw the faint purple lightning approaching. Without thinking, she blocked it in front of her. Pow! Coincidentally, the lightning struck the small mirror. This is bad. Zhang Xiaohua's hand sank. She thought to herself. This small mirror of unknown use is finished. Unexpectedly, when the faint purple lightning struck the surface of the small mirror, there was a flash of light. The small mirror did not change at all. However, the lightning was deflected back. The speed of the lightning was as fast as before. Zhang Xiaohua did not expect such an unforeseen event. Shimu Juan was even more surprised. Zhang Xiaohua had an immortal technique to resist the lightning, but Shimu Juan did not. He screamed, "Io!" Shimu Juan did not even have time to dodge. The lightning struck his head. In an instant, Shimu Juan's head was filled with faint purple arcs of light. They were small and concentrated. Following which, there was a loud bang and Shimu Juan's head exploded like a ripe watermelon. It can't be, it's so bloody! Zhang Xiaohua was also shocked. She floated and dodged the rain of blood. When Zhang Xiaohua landed beside him, Shimu Juan's headless corpse also fell to the ground with a loud thud. Shimu Juan, the eldest disciple of Rui Jin Hall with a bright future, had died just like that. Seeing that Shimu Juan had died, Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. She felt relieved. She looked around and found a secluded mountain rock. Then, she immediately closed her eyes and adjusted her breathing. -4. Chapter 895. After a long time, Zhang Xiaohua finally poked his head out of the mountain rock and walked to Shimu Juan's corpse. The expression on his face was very strange. There was no joy from killing his opponent, nor was there any relief from keeping his identity as an immortal cultivator. Instead, there was a kind of solemnity, caution, and a lingering fear. Indeed, the battle just now could be said to be thrilling. It was the most dangerous and most fortunate battle in Zhang Xiaohua's life. His opponent was merely the eldest disciple of the Rui Jin Palace who was at the pinnacle of the martial way, but he was already forced into a corner. If it wasn't for the fact that he was lucky enough to take out that little mirror with unknown effects, and this little mirror miraculously reflected the electric light of the purple phoenix hairpin back and coincidentally hit Shimu Juan's head, the person who was still standing there, and still gasping for breath, would be unknown. Loki! Zhang Xiaohua once again understood the essence of these two words. That day in front of Emotian Palace, he was forced into a corner by Shimu Juan's sword. Although his face was expressionless, he was still unconvinced. He was an immortal cultivator, yet he was forced into a corner by someone from the martial way. It was truly humiliating. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't use his divine abilities in front of the cult leader, he would have already made a move to teach Shimu Juan a lesson. After that, until today, Zhang Xiaohua never treated Shimu Juan as a real opponent. He thought that he was the same as Yuan and couldn't take more than 3 moves from him. However, the experience of escaping from the tiger's den made him suddenly realize that although the divine abilities of the immortal way were powerful and more miraculous than the techniques of the martial way, he had only cultivated for 5 years. What about Shimu Juan? It was at least 30 years. In terms of time, he couldn't catch up even if he tried. Moreover, judging from Shimu Juan's skillful control of the purple phoenix hairpin, although it was a magic treasure of the immortal way that was easy for immortal cultivators like Zhang Xiaohua to use and its power was pure, the incense cult was a great cult that passed down the immortal way. Although most of the disciples couldn't use immortal spells, the seniors and experts of the incense cult had already racked their brains to find a way to use martial techniques to drive immortal magic treasures. Moreover, these techniques had been refined over thousands of years, so they were even more effective and perfect. In contrast, although Zhang Xiaohua was a pure immortal cultivator, he was only a half-baked cultivator. He had self-taught, and comprehended it on his own. Although his foundation was solid, he lacked systematic learning and comprehensive guidance. As for Dharma weapons, there was no need to talk about them. Zhang Xiaohua was only relying on the fact that others didn't have divine senses. She had picked up Dharma weapons left behind when the immortal way was destroyed from all the junk. On the other hand, Shimu Juan had a rare Dharma weapon from the incense cult. It was unknown how much more powerful it was than the one in Zhang Xiaohua's hands. Now that he thought about it, the little mirror aside, the Crimson Spirit Shield might have been an unknown item from the incense cult 10,000 years ago. After many twists and turns, it was tossed into the Heaven and Earth Hall. After lamenting over Shimujuin's advantage, Zhang Xiaohua exhaled deeply and shook his head slightly. All his previous battles were basically one-sided. As long as Zhang Xiaohua took out her Dharma weapon and found a divine ability that others couldn't match, the results would be immediate. In this battle, although Shimujuin used martial techniques, the entire process was a battle of divine abilities of the Immortal Way. It was completely different from what Zhang Xiaohua had encountered before. Other things aside, Zhang Xiaohua's only impression of this battle of the Immortal Way was that it was fast and brutal. In a battle of the Immortal Way, other than fists and feet, there was also a series of weapons such as sabers, swords, rods, and so on. The two of them used their inner energy and competed with each other. There was always a competition process. In comparison, the battle of the Immortal Way seemed to be much faster. For example, in that instant just now, Shimujuin was injured by the little mirror in Zhang Xiaohua's hands. As for the brutality, it was even more so. The Dharma weapon used in the battle was incomparably powerful. Just a flash of lightning was enough to kill Shimujuin, a great expert of the martial way, in an instant. There was almost no chance for him to retaliate. The martial world under the Immortal Way was such a strange martial world. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but be fascinated. During the battle, there would definitely be Dharma weapons flying around in all sorts of colors. The flying sword would probably be flying around in all directions. Perhaps someone would also use something as big as a mountain to smash down. Wouldn't that be the legendary toppling mountains and overturning seas? However, the battle scene was indeed beautiful, but the ending might also be tragic. Shimujuin, who had been chasing after her, was now a headless corpse, all because of an inconspicuous little mirror. At this moment, the little mirror had already been kept in Zhang Xiaohua's coin pouch. She treated it very seriously. This item had not been refined yet, but it had immediately saved Zhang Xiaohua's life. Needless to say, it was definitely a good item. Zhang Xiaohua reminisced about the friendship she had with Shimujuin during the battle. Then, she lamented the difference between the Immortal Way and the Martial Way. She reached into her pocket and took out a freshly made offensive jade talisman. With a shake of her hand, she threw it at Shimujuin's body. A wisp of flame appeared and slowly incinerated the corpse, turning it into a handful of dust that scattered into the air. Looking at the ground, other than the primordial stone and the purple phoenix hairpin, there was also a palm-sized triangular token and a fist-sized beast head paperweight on the ground. Zhang Xiaohua did not go up to them. She waved her hand and the two items flew into her hand. Zhang Xiaohua first looked at the triangular token and scanned it with her divine sense. There were some obscure ripples that were different from her identity token. Only then did Zhang Xiaohua feel at ease and kept it in her coin pouch. Then, she looked at the paperweight. It was the same. However, the ripples it emitted were very heterogeneous, and there was an indescribable feeling to it. Since it was a Dharma artifact, Zhang Xiaohua did not mind and kept it. Finally, Zhang Xiaohua's gaze fell on the grass. It was the purple phoenix hairpin that had almost taken his life. He was not in a hurry to pick it up. Instead, he first took out the purple phoenix hairpin that he had obtained from Yu Zhuichuan. He frowned and used his divine sense to examine it carefully again. He was very puzzled. This purple phoenix hairpin clearly had a seal on it, and he could not activate it. How was it that Shimujuin was able to activate it with just a primordial stone? Very puzzled, Zhang Xiaohua picked up the purple phoenix hairpin on the ground. Indeed, it was the same as the one in Zhang Xiaohua's hand. It could not be activated directly. Eldest disciple Shi, you really died too early. If I could use the bewitching finger, I would like to know the secret behind it. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head slightly and kept the two purple phoenix hairpins. He also accepted the half-used primordial stone without hesitation. Even though he knew that it was far inferior to his own primordial stone, it was still better than nothing. Zhang Xiaohua could not possibly throw it away. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. Shi Mujuan is tailing me from behind. Will he stab Huan Huan to death when he enters the swamp? Zhang Xiaohua immediately rode on the wind and headed straight for the mountain path. He was running away in a panic just now. How was he able to determine the direction? It would be troublesome to look for him now. Zhang Xiaohua estimated the direction and walked for half an instant's time. He did not know where he was. Just as he was about to stop and take a look, he suddenly became alert. His body fell to the ground like a rock. He did not stop and instantly burrowed into the ground. After a while, a small head appeared beside a small stream. This was a small stream that came from the west and flowed to the east. Beside the stream, between two big trees, there was a person wearing green clothes and a bamboo hat. He was standing there quietly. Eh? Who is this person? Looking at his clothes, he doesn't seem to be an inner disciple of Rei Jin Hall. Could he be a subordinate of Spring Equinox or Awakening Zhe? Zhang Xiaohua frowned and thought. Who cares who he is? Either way. That's not right. I am now a guardian disciple of the fragrant religion. Even if I don't care, there's nothing wrong with listening in. Zhang Xiaohua dispelled the idea of leaving. She hid at the side and secretly watched. Another incense stick's worth of time passed, but the man was still standing there quietly, not moving at all. Zhang Xiaohua was almost convinced by his self-restraint. Needless to say, it must be because he was careless when he was young, and was punished by the teacher. Otherwise, he wouldn't be standing there quietly. While she was thinking, another disciple wearing similar clothes came from afar. He also used his qigong. However, Zhang Xiaohua was familiar with his clothes. It was the same clothes that the outstanding disciple of Dan Expanding Hall, Lu Lihong, wore in Wuming Hall. Needless to say, this person must be an outer disciple of Wuming Hall. Although the Wuming Hall disciple was still far away, he was much taller than Lu Lihong. He should be a famous disciple of the Wuming Hall. Sure enough, when the disciple came closer, the man in green turned his head with a smile and said loudly, Senior Brother Guan, long time no see. Your martial arts have improved by leaps and bounds. Senior Brother Guan frowned and stopped. He looked around and seemed to be observing. Then he said in a reproachful tone, Junior Brother Qing, you don't have to be so loud to welcome me. He. Junior Brother Qing laughed and said, Senior Brother Guan is as careful as always. No wonder you can do well in Wuming Hall. I really envy you. No, each has its own advantages. Wuming Hall is a place of trouble. How can it be compared to Junior Brother Qing's Shiyu Hall? Shiyu Hall? That Junior Martial Brother Qing smiled bitterly and said, If Senior Martial Brother Guan didn't mention the Shiyu Hall, I would feel a bit better. Now that you mention it, I can't help but feel angry. When I came to spread the fragrant religion, I heard that Shiyu Hall was a good name, so I chose this place. Who would have thought that it was a place to mine jade? I have been a miner for many years. Ha! Senior Martial Brother Guan also laughed. Junior Martial Brother Qing, don't complain. Back then, we were all young and didn't think too much. Since the Heavenly King wants us to come, we will come. As for what we do, isn't it all the same? Are they all working for the Heavenly King? Heavenly King? Zhang Xiaohua, who was eavesdropping, was stunned. Oh my God, we met someone from the Tenria sect. -4. Chapter 896. Of course, the foreign teachers she met before all called them Lord Spring Breeze, or Lord Jingzhe. Who would call them Heavenly King? The Tenria sect was really generous. No one would have thought that they would choose such a remote place. If Zhang Xiaohua didn't happen to know, how would she know? Unlike that Jingzhe, who had only guarded Tianmu Peak, Zhang Xiaohua had encountered him several times in a row. Since she knew that it was a matter of the Tenria sect, Zhang Xiaohua paid attention to it. Junior Brother Qing said with a bitter face, If I could, I'd rather go back in time. I won't be bothered by the name Shiyu. Senior Brother Guan smiled and didn't answer. It seemed that he was used to such complaints. Junior brother Cheng had to shut up when he saw that senior brother Guan didn't answer. He asked in a low voice, "Senior brother Guan, what's the situation recently?" "Nothing. We've already reported to the Venerable. Those that we haven't found are probably the secrets of the incense cult. With our status, I'm afraid we don't have any hope." "Indeed, it's the same for me. We've already reported to the Venerable. Besides, what good things do we have in the Shiyu Hall? A few months ago, a lot of people died in the Orchid and Dusk refinement. Everyone in the hall is crying and saying that they want to practice martial arts again. TSK. I heard that your Wuming Hall was also annihilated. What's the use of practicing martial arts in the Shiyu Hall?" Senior brother Guan smiled faintly and said, "After practicing martial arts, you'll have some strength and a sense of security. It's better than putting your life in the hands of others." Then, senior brother Guan looked around and said, "Since there's nothing else, I'll go back. Wuming Hall doesn't seem to be doing anything these days, but it's very tight inside. I'm always scared. Although this place is remote, maybe someone will see us." "Oh, senior brother Guan, you were talking loudly when you came here. Why are you scared after just a few words? Besides, aren't you out on an errand? Even if I return later, I can still report to my superiors. Can you just tell me that Wuming Hall is safe and sound?" Senior Marshal Brother Guan laughed. "You won't be able to see the Venerable One anyway. You only asked someone else to pass the message. Are you afraid that the Venerable One will be angry?" Soon after, he thought for a while and said, "Since Junior Marshal Brother Ching wants to know, I'll tell you something that can't be considered information. Our Wuming Hall has suffered a great loss since the Orchid Dusk refinement. Although our morale is a bit low, the inner disciple test that has just begun is worth watching. With Senior Brother Guan's martial arts, it shouldn't be a problem for him to pass the inner sect test." Junior Marshal Brother Ching interrupted. "Of course not," Senior Marshal Brother Guan said proudly. "It's just that I don't dare to go beyond the Venerable One's orders. If I go to the Lingering Fragrance Peak, the Wuming Hall will be empty again. I'm afraid that the Venerable One will be worried again. Capable people are always busy. Then I'll have to trouble Senior Marshal Brother Guan. However, is there anything unusual about this inner sect test?" Senior Marshal Brother Guan shook his head. "There's nothing unusual about the inner sect test, but there's something strange. The disciples who performed well in the inner sect test will of course enter the next round and wait for the next test. However, the disciples who were eliminated are not the same as before. Instead, they are gathered by the hall leader. Together with the hall leader's name, a total of thousands of people are sent to the Dragon Creek Valley on the Dragon Head Peak." What's the Wuming Hall doing?" Junior Marshal Brother Ching blurted out. "Are they doing something? Who knows? This is all done by Hall Leader Peng and the others." "How would I know?" "Oh, also, when I came out from the Dragon Head Peak, I heard a piece of news. It said that the Lingering Fragrance Peak sent a disciple named Ming Qing to be the deputy hall leader of the Wuming Hall. I don't know if it's true or not." Junior Marshal Brother Ching shook his head. "Senior Marshal Brother Guan, do you still need to say this? This Ming Qing must be related to these thousands of people. Maybe he's the deputy hall leader of these thousands of people. This piece of news is so important. How can you say that you don't have it?" Senior Brother Guan shook his head. "Because you urged me so much, I didn't do anything about it. Anyway, these things came from Lingering Fragrance Peak, so the Venerable One must know about it. I think it won't be too late to tell you after a few months when the truth is out." Then he smiled bitterly. "We're all trapped here. A few months is not much different from a few days or a year." Junior Marshal Brother Cheng's eyes lit up. He whispered mysteriously, "Senior Marshal Brother Guan, speaking of this, I also have a piece of news similar to yours. It hasn't been confirmed yet. Let me tell you." What is it?" Junior Brother Cheng looked around and said, "Senior Brother Guan, you know that the Immortal Tao formation of the cult of incense is like a tortoise's shell, protecting the 19 peaks of the cult of incense tightly. Even venerables like us have no way to send news out when the formation is closed. But how is it that the cult of incense is able to send news out at any time? Isn't that obvious? It must be because they can control the cult of fragrance's formation. How do you think they can control it? I don't know. Why did you suddenly think of this? Moreover, Senior Marshal Brother Guan, do you think the cult of fragrance's formation consumes that qi? Where does it come from? I'm going to faint. Junior Marshal Brother Qing, why don't you just say it? It's like this. I can be considered to have some status in cleansing Jade Hall, so I'm aware of the underground jade mines of cleansing Jade Hall and have been to most of them. However, just last month, I suddenly discovered a passageway in an abandoned jade mine on 9 Radiance Peak by accident. It's a passageway that's much deeper than the passageway we usually use. However, when I searched for it a second time, I didn't find the entrance to that passageway again. Don't you think it's strange? I clearly marked the surroundings, but the entrance wasn't there. Something must have happened. You're not mistaken, are you? Senior Marshal Brother Guan asked in surprise. Of course not. I remember it clearly. It's definitely true. Junior Marshal Brother Qing made a solemn vow. Therefore, I think that passage is the one the cult of fragrance uses to communicate with the outside world. Moreover, Senior Marshal Brother Guan, if there's a passage in the jade mine, then is this jade mine the support of the cult of fragrance's formation? This? Senior Marshal Brother Guan was really shocked by Junior Marshal Brother Cheng's words. He scratched his head and said, "This conjecture is a little ridiculous. You should tell the Venerable One." You think I should tell the Venerable One? No, Junior Marshal Brother Cheng is the one to decide this matter. I'm just suggesting. With that, Senior Apprentice Brother Guan looked at the sky and clasped his hands. Junior Apprentice Brother Cheng, that's all I have to do. I still have to return to the Black Tomb Peak, so I won't delay any longer. All right. Actually, Senior Marshal Brother Guan just came down from Dragon Head Peak not long ago. Why don't you stay a little longer? Senior Marshal Brother Guan pursed his lips. He leaped up and said with a smile, "Let's talk next time. This place is not far from Dragon Head Peak. Don't let the disciples of Wuming Hall see you." Seeing Senior Marshal Brother Guan leave, Junior Marshal Brother Cheng raised his hand and said disinterestedly, "I'm just talking to you. Is there a need to be like this?" As he said that, he picked up the direction and went straight ahead. After Senior Marshal Brother Cheng left, Zhang Xiaohua emerged from the ground. Her brows were slightly furrowed. The conversation between the two might not have been a big deal to others, but Zhang Xiaohua was an immortal qi practitioner. She had encountered a jade mine when she was refining an orchid dusk. She knew that there was dense yuan qi in the jade mine. Therefore, what Junior Marshal Brother Cheng said might have been a pipe dream to others, but to Zhang Xiaohua, it was like the sound of nature. If what Junior Brother Cheng said was true, then the jade mine under the 9 Radiance Peak could really be the foundation of the incense cult sect protecting Grand Formation. Moreover, this jade mine was also incomparably huge. It could actually support this huge formation for tens of thousands of years. However, when she thought of this, Zhang Xiaohua was a little doubtful. How much yuan qi was needed to support the formation for tens of thousands of years? Then, how big was the jade mine under 9 Radiance Peak? It was simply inconceivable. Moreover, if this passage could really lead to the outside world, it would be even better. There was still more than a year before the restriction of Dianqi Lake would be lifted. Zhang Xiaohua could not wait to tell her parents in Guizhuang House that she and her second brother were safe. Wouldn't it be great if they could use the passage in the jade mine? Junior Marshal Brother Qing failed to find the passage. Zhang Xiaohua could use her divine sense and escape through the earth to find the passage. When she thought of this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart was burning with passion. It seemed like she should make a trip to 9 Radiance Peak if she had the chance. However, was this the time to think about the future? Then, Zhang Xiaohua came to a realization. She should find the odd beast, Huan, first before thinking about anything else. Looking at the direction the two of them left in, it was obvious that Zhang Xiaohua was flying with Senior Marshal Brother Guan of Wuming Hall. He was out on official business, so he would definitely take the main road. She had followed the main road earlier. If she were to follow Junior Marshal Brother Cheng from Shiyu Hall, she would not know where she would end up. Sure enough, not long after, a wide mountain path appeared in front of her. Zhang Xiaohua found the familiar place without much effort, and found Huan again. Zhang Xiaohua rode on Huan and continued forward. When the sky was about to turn dark, a huge mountain peak appeared in front of her. It was similar to Tianmu Peak, but much smaller than Yixiang Peak. Needless to say, this should be Wuming Hall's Dragon Head Peak, the place where Senior Marshal Brother Guan left earlier. Shall we go up and take a look? Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment. Then, he jumped up from Huan's back. Was there a need to say more? On this Dragon Head Peak, the existence of the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace was still waiting for him to find. Immediately, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up. She patted Huan's bald horn, and Huan also cried out in joy. She didn't need to raise her whip and gallop. -4. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.